On the 16th day of the lunar calendar, it was marked as the Day of the Visitors. Once the Beyond broke through the seal of the shadow world, they blended in with humans and began devouring them, bringing chaos to the world. There was a person named Haru. He was a deity who guarded the entrance of Mount Inwang, preventing the Beyond from escaping. But if that was him, the question was why the Beyond had escaped. Haru lowers his hand, asking if he truly wants to know, because it was his fault. He had broken the seal, touching the forehead of the blonde man who stands in disbelief in a modern-looking eastern city at night. A hooded man asks if he doesn't want to know how his parents lost their lives. The blonde thinks back to when he ran from that strange man as a child and missed the chance to meet him. Every time he asked about his parents at the orphanage, the teachers dodged the question. He reflects that time changes people, and once he grew older, he realized there was something much bigger than just his parents. And while struggling to survive doing part-time jobs daily, his desire for the truth had faded. When he approached earlier, the boy nearly took the bait, but insulted the man by saying he didn't care. The hooded man asks if he doesn't want to know how his parents went to heaven, yet he just keeps walking and says cults these days don't know when to quit. But the hooded man warns Ziha that the secret of his parents lies on Mount Inwang. He asks if it doesn't intrigue him that he knows his name, and whether he remembers that his mother was a shaman, and that his family lived under the Beyond Rock on Mount Inwang. And Ziha thinks he does remember. He remembers his mother's gentle embrace and the way his father sang to him, and he remembers more than that. He sees the image of his parents being attacked by a creature, and the boy is startled by the vision. The hooded man touches Ziha's shoulder and says that if he wants to know more about his relatives, he must go to the Beyond Rock on Mount Inwang, because the truth about his parents is waiting for him. Ziha asks who he is, but the man vanishes before he can finish his sentence. Only a dark energy remains in front of him. The 16th of January on the lunar calendar was the anniversary of the day his parents passed away, and it couldn't be a coincidence that the man showed up on that exact date to talk about it. But he denies it, saying that must be it, because that night he goes to Mount Inwang, and that was the last thing he remembers. Ziha suddenly opens his eyes in a bed. He wonders where he is. He tries to sit up in the bed but feels pain in his torso, wanting to know why he's in a hospital and if it's an injury to his chest. Ziha wonders what on earth had happened. A man in a suit says that Mr. Ziha had finally woken up. He was Detective Soo-hoon Kim from the Shinsei Police Department. Ziha asks what a detective wants with him, and Detective Kim says he has some questions about the incident that occurred on Mount Inwang 3 days ago. The young man asks what he's talking about, but the detective explains that he was the last one remaining, because everyone who had been on the mountain had lost their lives. He shows a photo of the event at Mount Inwang, which leaves him in disbelief, since on January 16th, the police found 24 bodies on the mountain, and all 24 victims had been torn apart as if by a wild beast. Apparently, he was rushed to the hospital after the first witness found him. The detective had asked many questions, but the only answer he could give was that he couldn't remember, and eventually the detective left, thinking it was suspicious. Zeta wonders if that man who led him to the mountain was connected to the murderers, and now he knows two things for sure. One is about the secret behind how his relatives lost their lives, and the second is that the key must be on Mount Inwang. 1 month later, on the rock of the mountain, Ziha gets off a bus, thinking that the Mount Inwang murderers were just the beginning of the chaos. Similar cases began to happen in other parts of the city. Scars from large claws, symbols drawn with blood, bite marks with sharp fangs, and countless bodies with missing parts. Thanks to the cases describing claw marks made by predatory animals, people started to refer to the entity behind the killings, giving the name Beyond to these creatures. Ziha stops in front of a brick road, wondering who would have thought he'd end up coming back here, to the Beyond Stone on Inwang Mountain. Ziha says he was there that day too, underneath that rock, but he notices something strange. There was a rupture in the middle, and he wants to know if it was there before. The crack starts to glow blue, a light that gradually blinds Ziha. The young man falls to the ground on his knees, but he wonders what that was because his wound was burning. The light bursts out of the stone, illuminating the entire modern eastern city. Ziha shuts his eyes to avoid going blind, but suddenly opens one of them, surprised as he falls to the ground, and asks himself who that was standing before him, because there was a person in ancient clothes in front of him. Ziha wonders if this man came out of the stone and says he must be dreaming, but the man tells him it's not a dream, because his name is Haru, and he is the Beyond Stone of Inwang Mountain. Ziha is completely shocked by this, thinking he must have dreamed something stupid, as it's way too embarrassing to tell anyone. Haru asks about the wound he had last month and how it had grown, because the last time he saw him, he was just a child. Zeha asks what he knows about the wound. The deity says he was there when everything happened. The young man turns and asks about the invaders of Inwang Mountain, and Haru confirms, but says it's no surprise as he is a great deity who protects the world from the Biom. Zeha grabs his clothes and demands he stop the nonsense and just explain what the Biom were and what happened that night, and Haru says he's grown quite aggressive. But every year on the 16th of January in the lunar calendar, visitors come to this world and break the seal through the shadows of the world, blending in with humans. He is the deity who guards the entrance, preventing the Biom from escaping, and Zeha jokes about him being a guardian deity too, wanting to know who he really is and where he was when the Biom escaped at that scale. Haru raises his finger and says the answer is simple and lies in Zeha's memories, because it all happened because Zeha broke the seal. The young man's mind fragments into strange memories, and he wonders what that is and where it's coming from, along with that hooded man saying it would have been better to end his life. Zeha collapses to the ground, gasping from the memories he just received, screaming as loud as he can on that mountain. Zeha says his memories are coming back. A month ago, on the 16th of January of the lunar calendar, atop Inwang Mountain and near the Biom Stone, Zeha approaches, thinking someone was there. He wasn't expecting anyone, especially at that time, but the person turns to the young man with a slight smile on his face and says it's really Zeha because he had grown quite a bit. The young man wonders how he knows him, thinking he had never met this person before, but the man steps closer, commenting that he must not remember, telling Zeha to think a little, and asking if he really didn't remember as his eye shines. The young man's eyes also turn red, remembering that this man was a friend of his father, because they met many times when he was young. As he had been very kind to him, Zeha says it's been a long time, while the man flashes a smug smile on his face, saying that now he remembers, because his father used to bring him there and sing, as he belonged to the Biom tribe that lived on the opposite side of that rock. Zeha asks about that, and the man says the Biom tribe could only come up to that point on January 16th, and no Biom was exempt from this, until his father met his mother, who was the gatekeeper. She was a shaman who protected the gate that connected this world to the world of the Biom, and all she had to do was sing the gate song to open the passage and let his father stay. And so, the young man was born from his father and human mother, but to be exact, his mother was from the Gom tribe. He looked sternly at the boy, asking if he could sing the song they used to sing to him there. The gate song was something the boy remembered, saying there was a soft, low voice singing it, which belonged to his father. Zeha begins to sing the song, making the place start to tremble. Cracks appear on the mountain ground, causing a rumble throughout the entire path. The man smiles, saying it worked. A small gleam in the sky appears, growing larger over time. Zeha keeps singing his father's song, while an explosion goes off at that location and the man yells for his loyal companions to finally come out. He plants his foot on the ground as he begins to transform. Dozens of Biom appear to gather with their friend, facing the man in the jacket. He says his sealed power was finally returning. Zeha keeps singing that song, but the man reaches out his hand, grabbing him by the neck, and saying that 4,000 years ago, a mutt like him locked him away. Since shaman blood runs through him, he could close the gate again, so he'd better take his life, charging his claw toward the boy's chest. The blow causes massive impact damage. As Zeha cries a bit frozen, he remembers his parents. That man finishes his strike by throwing Zeha away, with a sick smile on his face for having dealt with him. He calls out to his companions and says their time had come, and they would resume the war they left unfinished 4,000 years ago. Zeha keeps writhing while unconscious, coughing on his knees when his memories stop. He repeats the name Hupo, remembering how he said it was better to take his life, and recalls his parents telling Zeha to run. The boy realizes that Hupo took his parents' lives, and begins to cry thinking about it. Since childhood, it was a fact that he grew up without his parents, and he often wondered if they had abandoned him, and soon that thought turned into resentment. There were moments he missed them terribly, and whenever that happened, he pat himself on the back, hoping the horrible feeling would go away, and he shut down the emotion. Only then did his parents become dead to him, or so he thought. When Haru placed his cold hand on his shoulder, the emotions buried deep inside him burst out, saying he knew how he felt and understood everything because he had been through a lot himself. Everything was taken from Zeha, his parents, and even his memories of them. It must have been painful, all the suffering caused by the visitors who came that day. Haru suggests to his child that they begin hunting the Biom. Terrified by the string of mysterious murders in the city, people needed someone to speak for them. Heading to the Sinsai Yisel Tower, a man stood on an altar with several cameras pointed at his face, while reporters asked if he was aware of the heinous crimes happening. That man was Wandong, president of the Yisel Group, which had contributed to the development of the tower 100 years ago. and he felt responsible. He was horrified by the brutality with which the victims were beaten and torn apart, and they knew the Biom were behind the crimes. So he pledged to end the situation by rewarding those who hunt Biom. Wandong offered 50 million for each Biom head, but a woman asked who would risk their lives for 50 million, and the man beside her said they didn't even know what those creatures were. Even though the amount was large enough to motivate those barely surviving, most citizens were skeptical. Haru, standing atop a building, asks to go with his child, but Zeta tells him to call him by his name. A girl walks down the street listening to the news on her phone, which says that around 4 p.m., 3 bodies were found near District 1, and that police reported they were Biom. She notices something in front of her, wondering what it was as she can't see without her contact lenses, but realizes it was just a fire hydrant in the way. And it was a bad idea to watch the news as it was making her nervous, and she was very jumpy. But then a drop starts to drip downward, falling on the girl's head as if it were saliva. A Biom is hanging upside down from the wall, ready to devour her. The creature lunges to bite the girl, and she screams in panic, but something strikes the creature's tongue to stop the attack. The Biom turns, surprised by the presence of other people. Zeha yells that he's going to get it, while Haru comments that the firearm felt strange. The Biom turns to attack the pair this time. Haru warns that the monster is about to charge, as the creature's eye starts glowing just before its attack. Running toward the duo watching, it spins to confuse them, moving at a ridiculous speed, and Zia thinks that this insane speed really was that of a Biom, and that he should shoot, but it was too fast. Shifting the direction of his pupil, the boy begins taking scratches as he hesitates to shoot, firing in the direction of the creature. Zeta's blood drops to the ground as he starts to stumble, slightly dizzy, wondering if he had lost too much blood as his vision was acting strange. He begins to remember someone telling him to run. Zeta keeps shooting forward. The Biom that had been trying to attack them appears behind him, striking the young man in the abdomen. Zeta looks back, semi-conscious. Haru approaches, calling out to him, and the girl who had been attacked earlier starts running. But the young man had grabbed the Biom's leg stuck in his abdomen and says he finally had it in his sights, squeezing the creature tighter to trap it. The Biom grits its teeth as it's shot in the belly. Zia keeps hitting it repeatedly. A purple glow appears in the Biom's mouth. Haru realizes what's happening and yells at Zeha to get away from it. But an arrow flies toward the monster, hitting the creature once more. Zeha asks what that was, and Haru wants to know if he's okay. The young man tells him not to yell in his ear because it's making his wound throb, and the deity notices another wound in his stomach. Zeha wonders about the glow he saw earlier and if it came from that arrow, but someone shoots again and tells him to keep his hands off unless he wants to lose them, because that Biom belongs to them. A member of Butterfly Tiger named Diak Lee jumps down from the building along with a girl named Nani Mai. The same happens with Rang Eo and a girl named Kaedong Ko, who says the Biom was nearly lifeless by now. Seong Jin Kim, the team leader, tells Diak to grab the head. Zia tells him to wait a minute and asks who they are, because that Biom is his. Diak laughs, calling him an idiot and saying he must be out of his mind, or something for not knowing who they are, and Rang Eo tells him to just let it go. However, Seong Jin walks away, saying he should consider himself lucky to have made it out alive. Zia tells the band of thieves not to leave just yet and to leave the head before they go. Rang Eo laughs at what he just said, and Diak says he really called them a band of thieves. Seong Jin turns back, completely furious at that remark, striking his hand into Zia's abdomen, asking how he dares call them thieves when they were the ones who defeated the Biom, so it belonged to them. The group members start stomping on him while Haru calls out to Zeha, but a knife is thrown his way. Nani says one more step, and that idiot would be finished. Seong Jin says he hopes they've learned their lesson, because this isn't a game for weaklings like them, and he'll let him go this time, but he'd better find another job while he's still alive. The group walks away, commenting that some people really do anything for money, calling it idiocy. Zia lies on the ground, badly injured, holding his abdomen. He thinks he was so angry, and frustrated that he was so weak. The Biom was extremely powerful, and his eyes couldn't even track its movements. He was completely helpless in that fight. But the thing is, he thought he had Biom blood, wondering why he was so weak and slow like other ordinary humans. Haru asks if he's upset, and Zia complains about him speaking loudly, but the deity has an offer for him. He wants to know why Zeha doesn't let him train him, and the young man asks if he's even strong. Haru questions that, and Zeha explains that he just watched him fight back there and assumed he was terrible at combat. But the deity says he didn't get involved in order to assess Zeha's skills and determination, since even 5 low-level Biom can't lay a finger on him, and a mid-level one would be an actual fight. Zeha asks if that was a low-level biome, and Haru questions how he's not surprised to find out he's strong. But since that day, many Beyond have come into this world, far stronger and faster than the one he just fought, and Hupo was one of them. The young man thinks it's been 1 month since the seal broke, and 2,210 people lost their lives in the city. 1,450 disappeared, and the number of unreported missing cases reached around 5,000. So he tells Haru that he wants to become stronger, and that had only been the beginning. In District 2 of Shinsei, a blonde girl was lying on the ground, calling out for Dujin, wondering if she was about to die. The man hugs her and asks her to stay with him, but the girl's hand stretches out across the ground, already lifeless. Some tiger Beyond were after them. Dujin cries, saying it was those monsters who took the lives of his dear friends. As the tiger charges toward the man, rain continues to fall over the city. Several executives lie wounded on the ground. A pistol hangs low in someone's hand, while rain drips on a sign about arms trafficking. Dojin says he can't believe the man tried to steal the moment he realized he was alone. And a man calls him a monster, wanting to know how he even knew this was part of his job, since it was impossible to bring food into the slums without doing dirty tricks. So he begs to be spared, please, charging with a knife as he screams that he doesn't want to lose his life. But Dujin shoots without any mercy. The man falls to the ground, saying he doesn't want to die. With a bag full of money by his side, Dojin walks toward an apartment. A boy wakes up in his bunk bed and calls him, asking if he went out again since tomorrow is his big day and he should have stayed home. But Dujin sits on a chair and says he's fine and there's no need to worry about it. The boy reminds him that tomorrow is his birthday and they were thinking of throwing a party after work, asking if there's anything Dujin wants. He says no, but the image of his photo begins to distort, thinking about the man's voice talking about protecting loved ones and not wanting to die, but rather stay alive. He starts trembling while looking at the picture frame, then calls out to Kyungsu and tells him to cancel tomorrow's job. The boy asks what that's supposed to mean, wanting to know if they aren't good enough. Dojin says no, it's just that. He thinks robbing an armored truck is too risky, and he knows it's late to say this, but he wants them to live normal lives. Kyungsu looks down in acceptance and agrees, while Dujin thanks him for understanding. But the boy sends a message to his friends saying he doesn't want to go behind Dojin's back, but he really wants to do this job. A girl named Gaeon suggests they do it, because Dujin always takes care of them, and now it was their turn to take care of him, and Michelle agrees, while one of their last friends sleeps deeply. Kyungsu looks at Dujin sitting in the chair, and silently wishes him a happy birthday, thinking how sorry he is, but just for today he won't listen to him. His expression changes as he wonders how things ended up like this. Everything was destroyed on the ground with fallen and wounded soldiers. Kyungsu only wanted to do one last job before stopping. While the Biom feed on everyone who was at that place, the creatures pierce car windows with ease. Michelle comments that these were the creatures from the news, and Kyungsu says they're Biom, and he can't believe they really aren't human. His partner says it's bad since they didn't manage to recover the money. Kyungsu wonders why today of all days, since they should have listened to Dujin. Michelle trembles while calling out to his friend, because a huge Biom was standing right in front of them, with its tongue out, ready to devour them both. Kyungsu starts to run and tells Michelle to do the same. While thinking about Dujin's name, both Michelle and he are struck in the chest by the monstrous creature's tentacles. An explosion occurs a bit nearby. Gaeon and her friend call out for Kyungsu and Michelle, while another Biom is behind them. A purple motorcycle speeds toward the scene. Dojin thinks he told them not to go when he received Kyungsu's message asking to let them take this job one last time. The young man is shaken when he looks ahead. Everything is destroyed before him, with a massive row of overturned and wrecked cars. Dojin asks what the hell happened in that place. While hearing Gaeon's voice calling to him, the girl says something's wrong with her because she can't move. Dojin shouts Gaeon's name. The girl asks him if she's going to lose her life, but Dujin says no, she's going to be fine, and she must look into his eyes because she's going to make it out alive. The girl's mouth, previously closed, opens slightly, and she smiles. Her hand lies stretched on the ground, lifeless, while Dujin stands in shock staring at it. As several Biom units surround him, the monster grinds its teeth with its blood-red eyes without mercy. Dojin asks if these were the monsters who took the lives of his dear friends. The Biom talks about his friends and mimics Kyungsu's body, asking if he came here to get him, saying it was so fun and delicious to do that, begging to be saved by Dojin. The young man thinks he should have lived a clean life, for all of them. He should have told them to quit this dark life before it was too late, and if he had celebrated his birthday, things might have been different. So he begs for forgiveness for being a fool, while crying heavily as he looks at the creature. An aura begins to emanate from Dujin, and he says the monster better be ready for what's coming next, pulling out a bluish pistol this time. He repeats for the monsters to get ready for this. The Beyond charge toward him while Dujin maintains a cold expression, but he runs toward two of them, landing shots that hit them right in the center, firing at the Beyond with extreme speed. Dujin only stops once he's shot them all. One of the Beyond thinks he just took out 7 of them in the blink of an eye. The young man reloads his weapon once again. The creature stays alert, expecting what's next, saying he seems to be out of ammo while launching its tongue at him. The creature manages to knock the magazine from Dujin's hand, laughing and saying it's going to toy with him just like the others. Dujin simply stares coldly at the creature, spitting a few bullets out of his mouth. The monster wonders if he had bullets hidden, as the young man takes aim at him, landing a shot to the creature's head and defeating it. One of the monsters begins to roar while lunging to slash him with its claw. The earlier pistol begins to transform, turning into a larger rifle for Dujin to use. The monster rushes forward with intent to kill, while Dujin takes aim and says he hopes that won't be enough to finish the monster, blasting the creature's torso with just one shot. The Beyond groans as it's wounded, and an explosion erupts on the bridge where the fight took place, with cars flipped on the ground and only Dujin still standing. The Beyond snarls at the situation, asking what the hell that was because this couldn't be happening, because that was nothing like the weapons humans use, and it was bad because he was going to lose his life. Dujin's rifle reaches the creature's face. He says he'll spare some time for it to apologize to its comrades, while the Beyond calls him an ignorant idiot and asks if he has any idea who it was. Dujin simply indicates that the creature is wasting what little time it has left. A stone approaches the two. Both the creature and the young man look toward it, and a voice from the sky says it can't believe a Beyond is sweating because of a human. He was a disgrace to the Beyond tribe, and the creature denies it, wondering what they were doing there. 2 lights crash into the ground with immense impact. Both lights take humanoid shape as they emerge from the smoke. One of the figures says he sent him there for being a mid-grade Beyond, but all he managed to do was take down a few humans. The Beyond calls the men Bolty and Mero, and says he only let his guard down because he had everything under control, while Dujin wonders if they're enemies and more well-known, so he gets his weapon ready to shoot. The Beyond glances sideways, thinking this could be bad. That projectile hits Bolty in the face. Smoke surrounds that face. The Beyond panics about his face, and Dujin thinks the other one won't let his guard down now. Maro tells him to stop joking because they don't have time, and Bolty starts laughing, apologizing because he can't help but mess around with humans when he sees one, destroying the bullet with just his teeth. Dujin realizes he caught the bullet with his mouth, and those must be Beyond too. Maro tells him to handle it already. The young man begins to tremble as the Beyond approaches. Then the Beyond shouts at Bolty to wait because that thing can't be used here, and everyone would be defeated, except for those 2. Bolty says he's a Beyond, so he should just dodge it. That Beyond yells that he must be kidding. Dujin watches all of it in shock. The explosion is massive in that place. An earring trembles to the side. Haru resonates with what just happened, saying he senses a powerful Beyond and wonders if it's Hyupo, but then says no, it's a little different, wanting to know if the Beyond have completed their preparations for the hunt, and if so, there's not much time left. So he tells Zeha to hurry as a creature tries to punch him. The young man is already wielding a sword, ready to deal with that monster. The explosion at that location destroys everything in its path. Mero warns that they need to leave now because there's not much time left, and Bolty suggests that what they've done should be enough to take care of those 2. They vanish along with a dark energy. At that destroyed bridge, Dujin was lying on a rock with his weapon beside him, still barely breathing, wondering what made him survive, feeling pain all over his body. A hand was touching Dujin's glove. The man looks to the side quickly, wondering if that was Kyungsu, and begins to cry over his friend's body. Then he grabs his weapon, saying he would exterminate every last Beyond still out there. 3 months later, in District 3 of Shinsei, a Beyond charges toward a person. The man complains that this was on a whole different level than what the intel said, and no one told him bullets and blades didn't work on those monsters. The creature says it thought about him hunting them but couldn't say who the real hunter was. It should demonstrate how it's truly done, so that humans should watch and learn, drawing blood from the area of its body. The Beyond is completely shocked because Zeha is right in front of him, slicing off its arm. His blade is surrounded by a bluish energy. The boy makes another clean cut to hurl the creature away. Its allies say they can't believe a human wounded him and he shouldn't let his guard down, while the Beyond tells them not to embarrass him. Haru holds the boy who was being attacked and tells him to stay there where it's safe. Zeha, panting, thinks he really managed to wound a Beyond with his sword, and what he feels when slicing through flesh is completely different from firing a gun, as all his senses are focused on his fingers. Haru touches the boy's hand and tells him to calm down, because getting nervous would only cloud his performance. So he should breathe a little and observe closely, since those were low-grade Biom, and 3 months ago, he couldn't even scratch them. But now he had the power to fight them all. Zia must not forget he's fighting a Biom, and the reason why he's fighting. The boy remembers Hupo and his parents, aiming to slice through the creatures charging at him. One of the Biom tries to punch him, and the boy leaps to dodge the blows. The creatures try to strike him with punches. Zia moves his eyes quickly, spotting an opening and slicing one of the Biom. He changes the rotation of his blade, thrusting into the belly of the Biom that looked like a bear, then slashing the chest of the monstrous creature. The tiger Biom thinks that he dealt with his allies in the blink of an eye, and he's never fought a human stronger than himself before. So he tries to run, since he has to report this to Bolty now. Haru calls for Zia, and he replies that he already knows, running toward the humanoid Biom. The creature thought it had shaken off the humans, but a bullet hits its head, causing an explosion at the scene. Zeta wonders how the Biom exploded. Dujin says he didn't know there were still people in District 3 and apologizes for scaring him. Haru asks who that man is. He responds that he doesn't see the point in sharing names in this chaos, but his name is Dujin, and he wants to know their names. Fixing his focus on the duo and staring at them, because Haru and Zia smelled like Biom. Dojin points the gun at his forehead and asks if he's really human. Zeha asks what he's talking about, sweating coldly in front of the barrel of the gun as Dojin stared at him coldly. The boy wonders if he wasn't considered human, while remembering Hupo saying he was born from a Biom father and a human mother, wondering how he should explain that. Haru pushes Dojin's gun aside and says that was a sinister object he carried, but he would explain since they're more like hunters who hunt Biom, and it's natural to carry the scent of them on their clothes during the hunt. Dojin questions if they're really Biom hunters and notes they don't seem to have a weapon, wanting to know if they defeat them with a sword. But the real question was another. He wants to know if they've ever heard of a Biom named Maro or Bolty. Haru says they know one called Hupo, but those names sound strange. Dojin apologizes for pointing a gun at them and tells them to watch out for the Biom he mentioned, because they're not weak and could take on many humans. But either way, he'll retrieve the Biom he defeated and they'll meet again, if they're still alive in the future. Zia comments that it's like he's looking for a specific Biom, and Haru tells him to hurry before the sun rises, heading to the equipment exchange. The boy asks Haru if he's seen that, because that's 100 million won, an amount he's never seen in a single day, and Haru says that's little for a sword. The reward for a Biom's head was 50 million won, and ever since Wandong made the announcement, many people had become hunters. Naturally, the price rose. Zia confirms it, saying that this lousy sword was the best he could get for 100 million won, and a good one would cost more than 400 million. Haru tells him to take a look at the sword, since it was on the verge of breaking after hunting a few Biom, and fighting another one would be like begging it to snap, and Zeha agrees. A radio alerts that the museum has been attacked, leaving several visitors and workers lifeless. A man on the street comments that he couldn't believe the museum was attacked, while Haru says they have to go there because they need to retrieve the sword that was there. Zeha asks why they need to go after that ancient sword since it looked worse than his current one, but Haru tells him to hurry. So the young man says they'll end up arrested if they're caught. The deity says the sword belongs to him, and Zia replies that he's the one who wanted it, while Haru tells him to lead the way instead of talking. As night falls over the city, the two of them approach the museum. A creature was lurking in that place during the night, using its sense of smell to find humans, or something close. There were dozens of Biom there, chasing a small human group. One of them gulps nervously. Diak comments that he's out of ammo and this is the end for them, while Rang Eo tells him not to say that so loudly, and their comrade says there are too many Biom there. Sion Jin says it's strange. They've been fighting them for hours, but there's no sign of police or military chasing them, and his teammate agrees he's right. The leader replies that something must be happening in Shinsei, and they'll just have to retreat. All members of the group are panting while a Biom hunts them. They're stunned when they notice something. The Biom was watching them. Zia comments that it's nice there since there's no one around, and Haru tells him to grab anything that might be useful. The group members think they hear voices and want to know if they're human. They argue they can't waste this chance, it's the perfect opportunity, and they have no idea how many thieves are stealing that equipment. Haru searches for the ancient age sword, saying he finally found that item, but Zia hears a noise and asks what it was, and the deity says the Biom are coming. The young man says he can handle one or two, it's fine. But a legion of creatures arrives at their location. Haru uses a portion of his power, waving his hands, creating a net to hold the Biom back, while the creatures push their heads through the rope, and then manage to get past it. Zia charges forward to fight a clawed Biom. landing a clean slash with his sword, but part of it breaks right after. The blade and the edge of the sword fall to the ground. A BM charges at the two of them, smashing the ground while Ziha dodges, jumping back. Several other creatures try to attack Haru. Haru falls to the ground while Ziha shouts for him, looking at the ancient sword that was behind them, saying that all he can believe in is that ancient sword. He didn't know for how long, but at least he had to use something to save the Guardian. So he charges at the Biam, warning Haru that he's going. But the sword begins to glow blue, making the young man's hands tremble for a moment. Zaya wonders what's happening as the Biam begin to surround him. The members of the butterfly team run away. Deokki comments that they got out alive thanks to the thieves, and Seong-jin thinks it's shameful to flee like that for their lives. Someone runs in the opposite direction. Rang-eo wonders what that was, and if it's another thief, because it's stupid to run into a place full of Biam. But the person begins murmuring some words. Ziha's sword begins to regenerate. He wonders what's up with that sword, and has a memory of a man in a crowd saying he would lead the vanguard, that he would slice through the Biam with the sword, bringing peace to his land. Ziha thinks that memories of the sword were floating into his mind. Something begins to fragment in that place. As time resumes its normal flow, the sword is now completely restored. Ziha thinks the sword transformed, and that man had called it the Slayer's Blade. He swings the sword instinctively. Ziha is completely stunned by it, because the simple motion of the sword cut the same Biam hundreds of times. The sword had moved on its own. The creatures rush at the young man, but he gets ready to face them all, gripping his blade firmly. Then he says it's not the time to get distracted because first he needs to save Haru. Leaping upward in a single jump, Ziha starts slashing with his new sword, slicing another Biam into several pieces, and doing the same to all in his way until reaching the guardian deity. Ziha prepares to protect his master, while breathing heavily and surrounded by Biam. The blade begins to tremble slightly. Ziha thinks the sword suddenly feels like it weighs tons. And it's not just the sword, even his clothes feel heavy, wondering if he's already getting exhausted at that point. That's not good, and there are still many around him. One of the creatures sneaks up behind him, charging with its claw toward the boy's face. But a spirit blocks the impact. Ziha is surprised to see the spirit. Haru tells him to focus, and the boy asks if his friend is okay. The spirit stomps forcefully on the ground, but the monster vanishes. Haru warns about the monster's disappearance. The creature prepares to attack Ziha from behind, aiming to bite him, but something hits the monster's chest. The Biam notices what it saw, and screams in pain as it struck. Someone had fired an arrow, bow in hand. The person was ready to shoot again, creating an arrow out of thin air. He fires at two other Biam. The arrow's glow illuminates the man's face, but a Biam is preparing to strike him from behind. Ziha warns that it's behind him, and the archer tries to turn, as the monster appears ready to hurl him, throwing the archer against the wall. The Biam smiles while still intact, but something had cut its face. Ziha defeated the monster with a slash from his sword. Haru and the boy radiate their aura. The creatures start backing away, hesitant, running away from the two human fighters. Ziha breathes heavily, saying that he's alive. The injured archer starts to appear as the smoke clears. Ziha asks who this mysterious guy is, and Haru says they should get him out of there because it's dangerous. His friend comments that the deity hasn't given up on its little hunting game. Seong-jin smiles, saying he came back to see what was going on and to take a look at what was here. Ziha recognizes him for a moment, but the butterfly group starts to approach. Their leader says he's taking everything in the room, so they'd better get out fast unless they want to be hurt like last time. Seong-jin strolls around saying it's very impressive. Deokki comments that there are lots of Biam corpses on the floor, and the leader says it's a fortune right there. Ziha tells him to imagine their value. Seong-jin hadn't expected to see them there. They were hunting Biam before them and should not lay a finger on them. The boy says he captured them himself, and if they just leave while he's asking, everything will be fine. Seong-jin readies his pistol and says he was seriously thinking of fighting the butterfly tiger. Ziha says he doesn't know who Seong-jin is, but he knows the idiots on the team because they brought the Biam here. The leader says he has no idea why they're in groups, but they claimed these Biam, so they're taking them. Haru calls them a bunch of thieves, and Ziha draws his sword and says he'll leave the archer with him. The deity asks what he plans to do. Ziha thinks the sword feels heavy in his hand, and fighting the Biam had put immense strain on his body, gripping the sword tightly, because he would still try charging toward them. Seong-jin smiles, saying he wasn't joking, telling his team members to take him down, firing at him repeatedly. While a girl from his team rushes in, Ziha dodges the blows just barely, as the girl tries to swing her axe and Deokki charges in too. Ziha is surprised, but his eyes glow yellow and his reflexes spike, dodging the attacks with extreme ease and slicing through both of their gear in the process. Seong-jin questions what that was and wants to know how he did it with that old sword. Ziha gets ready to slash him, but something in his chest stops him. Falling to the ground, kneeling while gripping the sword. He thinks he can't breathe properly. Seon-jin smiles, saying he did well for a moment but hesitated when he had the chance. But something approaches the gun before he can fire, destroying Seon-jin's pistol. Dojin says he's heard enough. Haru recognizes that man there, as the hunter says he doesn't kill people while hunting Biom, and asks why he doesn't back off. Since assassins maintain professional courtesy with each other, and he crossed that line now, there was no choice but to intervene. Seon-jin recognizes Dujin at that moment, because he used to be a high-level rule breaker before becoming a hunter, so he won't hesitate to threaten Butterfly Tiger, and Dujin says he'll count to 10. The leader thinks it's annoying and risky to confront him, so he warns that they're leaving, saying that Dujin will pay for getting in his way today, and the man replies, whatever. Zia thanks him for saving him, and the outlaw says there's no need to thank him, because he was just making up for the time he pointed a gun at his face, so now they're even. Zia replies that's fair and thanks him again, collapsing to the ground from exhaustion as Haru calls out to him, calling him dear child and wondering what he should say, saying his hands are full and he'd be happy if someone could help, wondering if there's really no one, which angers Dojin. Coming out from inside the museum, the group heads toward the apartment. Dojin comments that the place is too small for 4 people. Haru asks him not to criticize his home because being small doesn't mean anything, and Zia complains that it's his house, but thanks Dujin for helping because he's sure it wasn't easy to carry him all the way there, so he can feel at home and rest. The man says, setting that aside, he wants to know if Zia was really thinking about fighting against the butterflies. Zia asks what those butterflies are. Dojin explains that Butterfly Tiger is one of the teams that expanded its influence after they started hunting monsters, and they're pretty big, a violent group. Zia says it's fine and makes a mental note, thinking that even if he seemed rude, Dujin was actually a good guy in the end. The archer who had been unconscious starts to open his eyes, asking where he is. Dojin says he finally woke up, and Haru comments that it's his house and he's safe there, but Zia complains again that it's his house. Then the archer asks what happened to the Biom in the museum, and the deity says he already took care of them, and if the guy was planning to hunt, he's late. So the archer repeats about the Biom, asking if they saw a girl there, and Zia asks about a girl. The archer says she looked like him, short with braided hair and wearing something blue, while Zia says he shouldn't be looking in a Biom-infested place. He replies that there was an operation in the museum a few days ago, and they were all attacked. Then he heard a rumor that he showed up. The blonde asks who he is. The archer says the Biom was wearing red clothes and had a tattoo on his neck. Dojin is stunned hearing this. Zeha apologizes, saying there was no one else there besides hunters like them, and wonders if the girl is his sister. But Dujin grabs his shoulder, asking if the Biom he's talking about had a scar on his right eye, because he's been looking for him and wants to know where he is, wondering how he even appeared at the museum. The archer says he wouldn't be running around if he had any more details, but all he knows is that the guy is strong, and Butterfly Tiger ran away from him the moment they saw him, without even trying to fight. Then he picks up his bow and says he's leaving, and doesn't know much about the others, but thanks them for saving him, introducing himself as Juan, and says they should let him know if they find his sister. Zeta tells him to wait a second, catching him by surprise, while handing him something and telling him to eat so he'll have enough energy. Smiling as he talks to Juan, he looks at the bag, thoughtful, and thanks him for it. At nightfall in that ruined city, the sign for the Sinsei Museum was near the fire. Members of Butterfly Tiger shout for everyone to hold position and not retreat under any circumstances because they must drive them back. A man in a beanie says they're not going to last. They're going to die at this point. A tongue lashes out toward the two of them, exploding one of them. His comrade tries to fight back with a dagger, wondering how this was happening, because he'd never heard of Biom moving in groups. One of them extends a hand, releasing energy and lengthening his claw. The gang member calls them damned monsters, getting struck in the chest by the monster's claw. Mero throws him far with one blow. The smoke starts to clear around them, while the Biom is still pointing his finger, and announces that the entire area has been cleared. Hupo congratulates Mero on a job well done, as the group of Biom was the only one left on that street. The leader tells Mero to check if they've lost any of their forces, because they need to move as soon as the count is ready, and he accepts the command from his master. The gang member's hand begins to tremble, his eyes already lifeless. He starts coughing a bit, still gasping after being struck. Bolty notices this in the man, and a bigger smile spreads across his face. He says the man was still alive because he was very lucky, since the others stopped breathing before they could feel that, because it was horrible. But he had the chance to scream before they lost their life, so he would do him a favor and let him scream everything he wanted while still alive, unleashing a skill and saying he was better than Maro. The defeated soldier sighs one last time as he starts to burn, incinerated by Bolty's magic. Hupo watches it without much reaction, but slowly approaches the Biom, looking at him with contempt for that attitude. because he remembers someone being struck in the chest and suffering, while muscular BM do it again and again, hurting his people even after they've fallen. Huppo watches it seriously, grabbing Bolty's shoulder and asking if he plans to stoop to the same level as those beasts, and the boy asks what he means by that, because he's just paying back the pain they cause, and Huppo says there's no glory in killing slowly, because they had won, unlike the Gom tribe, so they should take revenge swiftly, before their enemy has time to feel pain, since any kind of pain is a burden they will carry with them, just like what happened 4,000 years ago, and they can't repeat that history. He orders them to move to the next district, and Jikyu and Yujiap should move to District 6 with their forces. Both agree, while the rest should destroy everything. Maru and Bolty were to go to District 7, and both agree with that. Huppo extends his claws with his powers and orders them to conquer all the districts before dawn, because they must annihilate all the descendants of the Gom. Bolty runs through the city streets, bursting from the ground with a single step, complaining that he doesn't understand his master, because the Gom tribe imprisoned them in 4,000 years of suffering. The pain makes the revenge complete, and he asks why he's being told not to make them suffer. Manhwa says it's an order from their master, and Bolty agrees because he knows, but he has no other way to release all this energy. When they're 1 kilometer away from District 7, Bolty notices something strange on the path, wondering what that thing forming in front of him is. A humanoid figure appears, hooded, saying they should resent the humans, because that's why he came with an offer that would benefit them. Manhwa thinks he must be one of the biome hunters the humans are talking about, and warns Bolty that they don't have time to entertain him. Both transform, ready to fight, vanishing from the battlefield in seconds, and trying to strike the mysterious man from behind. Manhwa quickly glances to the side with his reflexes, and an explosion occurs in that area. As the smoke begins to fade, the man comments that attacking so suddenly was very rude, but he smiles, because now it's much easier to talk, keeping Manhwa and Bolty on the ground. The red biome asks what just happened, and why they're lying on the ground. Manhwa thinks it's humiliating, transforming his fingers ready to attack, as a blue energy begins to swirl around, and his face turns bluish too. But the man says it's useless, because he's not strong enough to escape. Manhwa says he's not human, he could tell, and the man replies that it doesn't matter, because he's only there to make them an offer, asking if they want to hear it. At the headquarters of the Butterfly Tiger Gang, Seong-jin says those were the ones who stole their rewards and threatened them with their gear. His boss says they were really good, and he won't blame him for what happened this time. In exchange, Dong Cheol, the gang's commander, wants him to bring Dujin and Zeha to him, because they're the kind of talent the Butterfly Tiger needs. The man leaves the office completely irritated, asking if it's serious that they actually need those guys, and how his boss can say that when he knows they cause damage to their gang, because they deserve to lose their lives, but instead, they'll be joining them. A man approaches and asks what he's doing, and Seong-jin greets Kyung-tae, saying it's been a while since they last saw each other, and tells him not to call him sir anymore, since now they're both team leaders. Kyung-tae replies that he'll always be his leader, asking what that clipboard in his hand is. Seong-jin suddenly has an idea. He calls Kyung-tae and asks if he's free right now, and if so, could he bring a few idiots to him, and the guy asks who they are. Seong-jin tells him to say who they are, and Kyung tries to explain that they're biome hunters, but his leader interrupts, saying they're righteous people who help others. And that's why his commander Dong Cheol wants to meet with those bandits. Seong-jin confirms they're bandits, and says he's free to deal with them if necessary, since after all, they're a disease that needs to be removed from society. Zia cleans his ear with his finger, wondering if someone is talking bad about him. Dojin says he's going out to get some snacks and asks if they want anything, while Haru suggests a popsicle and Zia asks for a soda. Zia's phone repeats the news that the Yisel group has proposed that teenagers should be accompanied by biome hunters for better protection, and the group announced they would cover all the costs. Zia thinks that's fine, and that he's gotten so used to having them around he almost forgot. He wonders how long Dujin plans to stay with them, and the man replies that the biome he's hunting hasn't shown up yet, so he'll cooperate until he finds them. Zeha asks if he's sure he's not just lonely. Dojin stays silent for a few moments, then asks if Zia heard about what happened in District 6, since some biome claimed the area, and Zeha thinks he's trying to change the subject. He met with some people recently, and they said the armed forces can't handle the biome. Haru comments that everything will vanish, even Districts 1 through 6. Zeha asks why they're attacking the districts one by one in consecutive order. Dojin thinks the same thing and assumes it's like they're playing a game, and he doesn't like the feeling of being conquered like it's some kind of mission. Haru explains that, in other words, they're safe in District 10 for now, and Zeha gets annoyed at that, but the deity says he was just voicing his thoughts. Dojin says he's pretty pessimistic and heartless for someone with such a gentle appearance, but Zeha tells him to stop talking with his mouth full. A tremor shakes the area. Zeha wonders what's happening, while Dujin grows serious, saying nothing. Haru says that this was something that signals the presence of Biom. A dark energy starts to envelop a gas station. A man has a cut on his arm, telling the kids to stay behind the teachers. Some Biom comment that it was way too easy to break this city. One of them says he knew he made the right choice accepting the order from Bolty. He was worried at first because Bolty joined up with a suspicious hooded man, but it turned out to be more useful than expected. Another replies that he bets the others are busy with boring stuff, and his ally says he serves the right masters, because that's a universal truth. But the Biom says that since they can't bring everyone here, they should entertain themselves with these ones first. One of the teachers trembles in fear at the Biom, but the Biom is sliced in a matter of seconds. Zia simply sheaths his sword after defeating the creature, asking if everyone is alright. A teacher says he took down a Biom in the blink of an eye, and the female teacher asks if he's a Biom hunter. He arrived at the perfect time. She thanks him with a bow while Zia thinks that Haru and Dujin disappeared and wonders where they went so quickly. A child grabs Zia's arm, calling him sir. The young man holds on and asks what's wrong and if he's hurt, while the boy shakes his head, explaining that his friend is still on the second floor inside that school. A little girl is crying, trembling as she hides and calls for her parents, saying she's scared. But something approaches and casts a shadow over the girl. It's a terrifying Biom coming to attack her. Salivating before lunging at her, someone watches from the window. The Biom suddenly turns around, saying he didn't realize there were still humans left here. Zia exhales slightly before moving, kicking off with his foot to leap forward, heading toward the window, crossing his arms with his face to shield himself, shattering the building's glass. The young man glares with the intent to strike, but he notices something different in front of him, because someone had already taken down the Biom with a spear. Zeha asks who he is. The monsters turn toward the man in the window, asking what's going on, because they didn't know there were still humans here, while the other one says this one counts toward their human quota. So he was really lucky, and they charge toward the spear-wielding man. The attack closes in on the boy, striking down like an axe, while the other Biom says that now he was going back to what he had left behind as the little girl trembles in fear. But something hits the Biom's head at that moment. He tells them to learn some manners as he turns around, only seeing his Biom friend defeated on the ground, while the human radiates energy from his spear, saying there's no way that could have happened, and asking if he's a Biom hunter. A different monster appears behind the boy, saying one of theirs lost his life, asking if that kid did it, and the Biom who was with the girl says yes. The leader starts laughing, calling all the Biom in the area, and orders them to take that human man's life. The boy steps back while gripping his spear, crouching down as all the creatures charge in to defeat him, and releasing a bluish energy as he spins, slicing through all the Biom in his path. The little girl keeps trembling under the table, but the boy tells her not to worry, because he'll make sure she gets back home. The Biom leader starts laughing at that, asking if he really thinks he can leave there alive, saying humans only have silly dreams, and that he can call himself a cat if he survives. Back to the present, the creature lies lifeless. Zia keeps walking while the spear-wielding man protects the child, with a hesitant smile still on his face, and asks who he is, but the spear breaks at the tip. The man denies it expressionlessly. The children gather and hug while the adults stand side by side. Zia says he's happy to see everyone safe, and the man agrees. The blonde says he was amazing back there for defeating all those Biom alone, and introduces himself. That man introduces himself as Joan. As Haru and Dujin run toward him, they ask if everything is alright. The hunter asks where the Biom are, and Haru says he can't sense any, so it's over. Zia says they already took care of all the ones there, and asks why they took so long, while Haru says he was saving others from Biom along the way. The deity wants to know who that man is, and the blonde introduces him as Joan, saying he was already fighting Biom before they got there. But setting that aside, Haru wants to know why Dujin has that angry expression, and the hunter says he knows why. But then he points his weapon toward Joan, telling Zeha to step away from him because he smells like Biom. Joan is completely shocked by that, while Dujin demands to know who he really is, but is suddenly lifted off the ground. Haru tells him to stop meeting new people with a gun. Dojin says he smells just like a Biom, and the deity explains there's no need to exaggerate because that scent is normal in Biom hunters. Zeha apologizes for that and says he pointed a weapon at him the first time too, but he's a good man, and Joan says he's got an interesting circle of friends, asking if that's his team, and the blonde says they're not a team but just joined up. Then Joan wants to know if he knows Bolty. A bullet hits the ground beside the man's foot. Dojin demands to know how he knows Bolty, but is lifted up once more. He yells, saying it's rude to lift someone up in a situation like this, and Haru says he certainly can't let someone roam free after shooting at someone. Zeha yells that he's right, and he can't just fire like that in a place like this. Joan explains that Bolty took his girlfriend's life, and he's been looking for him to get revenge. He thought they were Biom hunters and asked, but it just caused a misunderstanding. Haru says he's not a Biom, and Dujin tells him he needs to socialize more. The deity tells him to apologize since he was actually right, and Zeha agrees. Dujin apologizes for shooting at him and bringing up Bolty, says he actually liked him a lot. He notices something different about the boy, commenting on his gear, and Joan says it broke earlier while fighting the Biom, so it's time to get a new one. Dojin says he has no choice, because they were about to go exchange their gear, so he can grab something if he wants. Zeha says that's his way of apologizing, and Haru comments that he really doesn't know how to express his feelings. In the nighttime city of Shinsai, a rat sneaks through the sewer, jumping inside with great agility. The rat walks through that structure, while dozens of Biom had kidnapped frightened people. A man cries as he says he doesn't want to lose his life. Bolty repeats that, saying he shouldn't worry because he's not going to lose his life just yet, since all of them would be given a new life here, making the man cry even more. The people in cages reach their hands out through the bars, while others lie desperate and crying on the ground. Bolty says he'll live like animals, just like them. He orders one of the Biom to open the stockroom. The crying man begs to be spared, saying he'll do anything they ask, and Bolty replies that every human says the same thing when they arrive there, and all he wants from them is screams and pain, so now he should just wait quietly for his turn. That man starts to panic. Miro meets up with Bolty, and he says his friend has already returned. The blonde Biom comments that he seems to enjoy that place, and Bolty replies that it's the best, because this is exactly what he wants to do with humans, and he's enjoying it a lot, and if he's sure he can trust that suspicious human who appeared out of nowhere and gave him this fish-smelling place. Besides, he's still humanoid, and Mero says he'll just go along with it and enjoy getting revenge on the humans. And once they recover their powers and grow their claws, they will defeat him along with the rest of the humans. Bolty says he's right, and they'll go at the end of it all. Then he says he's heading out, and Mero asks where to. Bolty says he's going to meet Zaku. The humans tremble behind the bars, because there was a Biom locked up with them. Bolty walks over and says he hasn't eaten any of them, and he'll wait until he reaches his limit, while Zahu calls out to Bolty. The red Biom replies that he should eat these humans, but instead insists on causing himself more pain, and Zaku says he won't eat anyone, because they no longer need to consume humans to survive, and they must not take anyone's life. They should live together in harmony. Bolty says the humans started this, and asks if he forgot how the Gum tribe betrayed them. Zog replies that he can't punish the humans for what their ancestors did. The red Biom grips the bars of the cell, saying he spent countless years in the Shadow Realm because of the Gom tribe, while their descendants enjoyed a land filled with light for years. His hatred will never end until he takes the life of every human. Zahu asks why he defeated Nurei. Bolty grows even angrier, saying Nurei pointed her weapon at them out of pity for humans, and anyone allied with humans is against them. So he'll only ask one more time for Zahu to eat a human. The Biom says he won't eat anyone. Bolty complains that then he's giving him no choice but to resort to drastic changes. A Biom pulls a chain, dragging someone tied up into that place, and revealing a man, badly wounded, walking forward. That man is breathing heavily. Zahu asks what he did to this man, and Bolty replies that he prepared him especially for him, because he endured every type of suffering without even screaming once, and he saved him for later. But now he'll leak him to Zahu, throwing the human into the cell as Zahu goes to help. Smelling the blood inside the prison, Bolty asks why he's salivating just from that. Because he's free to eat him if he wants. It's that simple. Just one bite of that tendon-scented flesh the human is giving off. Zaku bangs his head against the floor, trying to resist, repeating the action while saying that he will not become a beast. Bolty questions that response, saying it's good for him, as he walks away with his hands in his pockets. The human breathes on the ground, murmuring. In the central shopping district of the old Shinsei district, people watch a man walking down the street and ask what he's holding. The green-haired man is holding something over his eye, looking behind him at that moment, and he thinks that old man has a king behind him, while the elder has a governor and the woman is protected by a royal inspector. The man says just as he thought. He can't see the past life of people like that, looking at Zeha, noticing something different about that man, and wonders what that is in the world. Because all those people have the same past life, and this one seems interesting. So he makes a decision right after, that he needs to follow them as Zeha lifts a box. His name was Seen, and he was just an ordinary man living a normal life. One day, a murderer acted on Inwang Mountain, and because one of the victims had been attacked by a tiger, people started calling it the Biom Killer. This incident not only crushed the economy in Shinsei, but also increased the stock value of the Yisel group, which played a crucial role in the city by placing bounties on the Biom. The situation quickly reached his home, and all of it felt unreal, making him think that nothing would ever happen to him, until he came face to face with the Biom himself. With his usual luck, the Biom devoured him in one bite, trapping him inside its stomach for days, during which he kept wishing to go to heaven while imprisoned there. It was dark, humid, and it stank, and every time the stomach moved, fear consumed him, thinking that he would feel pain when his end came. It was hard to endure. But then, a light shone in his eyes, and he desperately moved toward it to survive, feeling as if some kind of power was lifting him up. The biome felt it too, and threw Scene away, but the light didn't let the monster escape, causing a massive explosion. The monster was destroyed by the blast. Scene gasped for air afterward, while the biome turned into a pair of binoculars. Scene approached the object, trembling alone at home, and crouched down, thinking he couldn't believe he was alive because he truly thought he would die. Thanks to having lived inside the biome's stomach, he suffered constant fear and anxiety attack. After some time, he managed to calm down, and when that happened, he wondered what the item he had gotten that day really was. Going to the sink in his bathroom, Scene looked at himself in the mirror, saying it was the monster's eyebrow that he had knocked off, and it looked like a mask. He heard a voice saying it would lead the way and defeat the biome with the killer sword, bringing peace to his land. He saw that mixed-race man who had defeated the biome with the shadow of his sharp sword, but he looked like he was in agony for some reason. Unable to believe what he had seen, he asked himself why he was seeing things. Because ever since he had that biome's eyebrow, he learned to see people's past lives. That was just another day observing people, until he found people who had the same past life as he did, and that disturbed him, so he kept the biome's eyebrow, because he was certain he had to follow them. Heading to the equipment shop in the old district of Shinsei, Dujin asked what he had said. The seller confirmed that he had heard correctly, because the equipment cost 1.5 billion won, and Zia asked why it was so expensive. The seller assumed they were newbies and explained it was rare. It was light due to its size and had amazing speed, making it a top-tier item with a huge list of people searching for it. Dojin asked the seller if he thought they were a bunch of idiots, since he had traded his own equipment for 500 million won, and the seller said that was in the past. They continued arguing because the weapon was expensive and they wanted to buy it cheaper, while Scene thought he had no experience with haggling. Then he realized what that equipment was, saying there was no reason to try tricking them, while the seller asked who he thought he was, and said he should mind his own business. Scene said that item was the same one he had offered another hunter in a trade if he bought a weapon, and that it was outrageous to try to get 1.5 billion won for it there. Dojin pulled out his weapon and asked if the guy was trying to mess with them, while the seller worried people would get the wrong idea and blamed Scene for interfering. But it was alright, he would sell it for 800 million won, while Scene offered 300 million. The seller was shocked, and Scene explained that the spear was cheap and had to be cheap because he had lied, so 300 million was a fair price. Then the seller shouted that it was impossible, while people started whispering that he had been trying to trick others in that store. They wondered if he was a liar because he had bought an item just a few days ago. People in the shop started thinking he had been scamming biome hunters, and the seller realized that was bad, because now he'd have to sell that item at a lower price. So the seller slammed the table, called them rats, said he had bad luck, and that those thieves should just take the thing already. Back on the streets of Shinsei, Zia said luckily they had bought the weapon at a good price, and Juan agreed, because they wouldn't have done it without him. They thanked Scene for it and asked if he was a biome hunter too, and he thought to himself that he just happened to be there, but he had never actually hunted a biome before. Zia asked why he didn't join them for a hunt since it would be interesting, and Scene asked, "What?" The blonde interrupts him, asking if he was hungry, saying they would go eat together after helping them, and Scene thinks it wasn't the right time to say anything. After all he wanted was to watch them from a safe place. But he notices something different, wondering what kind of past life this had been, thinking it was as if he had come from a battle, and whether he was a war veteran. But he would wait, since he hadn't put on the biome eyebrow yet, while Juan approaches and Zia wonders if he was wishing for something. Juan keeps calling Zia and says he found him. The blonde asks what the archer needed, and how he found them there, also noting how tired he looked, while Scene thinks he looked like a living man. Zia wants to know what on earth had happened to him, but Juan says he was looking for them, since no one believes his words. But he saw the biome kidnapping people with his own eyes and saw the one with scars around his eye, with Bolty being there too and catching Dujin and Juan's attention. Juan says maybe his sister is there and he knows it's a lot to ask, but he wants them to do him a favor, begging the group to please save his sister. In the night city of Shinsei, people walk the streets covering their faces. Zia comments that this was the new district and wants to know if they're on the right path, and Juan says they're almost there. He then stops in front of a building and says that's where the biome was. Zia says it's a department store, and Juan says it's hard to believe. He thought the same when he saw it with his own eyes. One day, while walking and searching for his sister, he saw a group of biome taking some humans alive into a truck instead of devouring them on the spot. It was strange, so he decided to follow them, going to an underground apartment. There were several biome there, including the one who took his sister. Bolty with his hands in his pockets. Ziha says he can't believe that Bion had these methods and asks if he has a plan. Juan says he'll use their own methods against them. 2 guards were on patrol. Dujin appears behind one of them before he can react, while the other is restrained by Haru's spirit ropes, now dragging the train with 7 people aboard. Dujin says he'll go straight there and Ziha tells him to stay safe. A guard drives nervously beside the hooded man. They enter a strange warehouse. Someone knocks on the window and asks to park the vehicle. The driver asks if something was wrong, and the disguised Dujin says there have been many illegal parkings lately and he needs to check the parking card. The driver accepts and asks for a second, handing over a card, and Dujin says he sees the car is registered and apologizes for the inconvenience. Then he asks what goods he's delivering, as he doesn't see any truck companies around here, and the driver says he's new, while the Bion thinks this is boring, and wonders if he should take his life. But he notices something different through the window, because a man with a bow is approaching from the pillar, aiming to shoot at the truck. The arrow hits the Bion in the forehead. Meanwhile, inside the truck's cargo, the Bion say the vehicle has been parked for a while and wonder if something's wrong. But the door suddenly opens. Haru is outside, along with Ziha, Juan, and Scene. The truck shakes for a few seconds, but stops shortly after. Some Bion head down to the B2 elevator, saying they thought the others were nearby but they were taking too long, and their colleague says they're probably playing with the humans again. But the elevator finally reaches B4. As it opens, the Bion asks why it took so long. They'll complain if it keeps delaying, and says he knows they want to have fun with the humans, but, however, he stops mid-sentence when he notices something off, because the group of 6 people was there instead of the Bion. Dojin greets them with his weapon aimed. Back in the earlier cage, a Bion asks what that was, because Zahu hadn't eaten yet. That thing asks if he's hungry enough to die, because this isn't the shadow world and he will die if he doesn't eat them. And if he won't eat, he'll help him with his snacks, while the man begs to be spared, saying his taste probably isn't good anyway, and the woman says he's right, there's no meat on them, wanting to know about that man right there, because he heard that the man was strong and endured everything he went through, and the woman said she heard the same, since his taste was better than theirs. The Biom asks if that was it then, and says he knows that his tribe is nothing but scum, that they should look at how they sell one of their own just out of pity, and that all humans are the same as always, so he would feel no guilt in eating them. Zahu tells him to stop, saying they are not food, but people who coexist with them, and it was better to end this kind of behavior. The Biom kicks him in the face and says that's enough because he's tired of hearing that, and Zahu should listen because he has no idea how much he has tried to stay on the human side, but it's better to eat them unless he has a death wish. The blonde man on the ground asks for water. Zahu asks if that human finally woke up, while thinking that his consciousness hadn't fully returned yet and he should just leave him like that so it doesn't get worse, wishing he had something to feed him, even if it was anything at all, looking at his fist, hurting his own fist with his nails. Zahu gives him blood to drink, apologizing for it, saying it's all he can offer, but it will quench the thirst for now. That human begins to heal while smoke is emitted from his body. Zahu asks what that smoke was, because that human's body was regenerating, and he wonders how a mere human can do that, while the man breathes heavily. The Biom's hands tremble as he squeezes the blood, dripping it into the boy's mouth. That man asks what was happening, as the blood runs down the side of his mouth, because there was a Biom in front of him, and he wondered what in the world he was doing, as the blood continued to fall, since suddenly his body felt like it was on fire, clenching his teeth as his heart kept pounding. That man thinks he doesn't want to lose his life because he wants to live. He was in pain and hungry, wondering if it was because of the blood, and if it was because the Biom was giving him blood, wondering if he's not going to try to eat him, because right now he was losing his life to stop himself from eating a human, and even while being fed by him, a question crossed his mind, wondering who the bigger beast was, a Biom who doesn't eat a human even in danger, or him, who was eating the Biom. The answer was pretty obvious. The Biom hear a noise coming from the prison. One of them thinks he felt a strange energy, turning his head while grinding his teeth. The other Biom asks what he's doing, saying he should hurry since the truck must have arrived, and the Biom agrees to leave. Wondering if he was just imagining things, that man kneels before the Biom's body. A group of 6 people approaches the Biom's den. The walls had strange tumors. Dojin comments that these Biom have horrible taste in home decor, and Haru tells him not to touch anything since they don't know what it does. Scene wonders how a meal turned into a Biom hunt, though at least he had a few daggers for self-defense. Zeha apologizes for bringing him there, and Scene says he'll try to help however he can, asking if he uses daggers because he should be careful judging by how shiny they are, and Scene laughs. Juan calls everyone over in a whisper, stretching his arm out to stop them from rushing forward. The archer swallows his saliva, pointing his bow forward, but notices something strange because up to that point, no one was there. There were hundreds of prison cells in that place, People start screaming for help as soon as they see them. Dujin freezes, unsure of what to do. Two Beyond come down the stairs. One of them says they shouldn't bother getting Zahu, telling him to eat humans because he forgot everything the Gon tribe did to them, and his companion suggests leaving him hungry. Something hits the red Biom's head. Haru and Juan rush toward the other Biom. A spear hits the monster's face. Haru suggests they split up and rescue the people first. The lock on one prison opens, followed by all the other cells. Juan thinks he finally made it and asks Juhi to stay safe because all he wants is for her to live, remembering his younger sister and widening his eyes when he reaches the last cell. He fires his arrow, saying he's coming to save her, and hits the lock. Juan calmly approaches the prison, finally stepping inside. People run out shouting that it was a Biom hunter there to save them, thanking him. Juan keeps walking toward the back of the cell, looking at something in the corner that catches his attention, because there was a pile of blood-soaked clothes, and one of them is recognized by Juan. He also sees his younger sister's shoes. In a district of Shinsei, a picture of a four-person family was on the wall, a photo of Juan on a podium. Judy wakes up early and asks if her brother is going for another day of training. Juan apologizes and says the competition is close, and he needs to practice even on weekends. The little girl complains, saying she was hoping to play with him today, but he always has a competition coming up. Juan wishes there were a game where his little sister would be better, but she won't get a present if she doesn't turn that angry face into a smile. And Juhi repeats the word present, admiring the dress she had received, and Juan replies that she had her eyes on it and they should go somewhere better next time. Juhi says that's a promise, and her brother agrees. But Juan now sees that dress stained with blood on the ground. He falls to his knees, saying he feels guilty because it must have been horrible. He begs his sister to forgive him for taking so long because he truly is sorry. Raising his head as he trembles, Juan tells her to just wait, because he will make sure that whoever did this to her pays for everything they did. An explosion hits the prison as people start running. Several Biom charge at the people. Haru warns that the Biom were starting to gather there and tells them to evacuate quickly. Dojin removes the magazine from his gun, switching to another as he says the noise was attracting more Biom. He keeps shooting as a creature stalks behind him, appearing behind Dojin right after. Ziha, Juan, and Haru were fighting other Biom at the same time. Juan approaches the area, with pale energy arrows aimed at the Biom. Juan's eyes grow colder and colder, and he fires, wiping out all the Biom. Other Biom run toward him. One of them complains about these hunters and wonders how they found this place. A leading Biom commands them to retrieve their food. The people keep fleeing from that prison. Scene leads them through the path and warns that there's an elevator below, but a Biom walks on the ceiling, asking where those humans think they're going. Rushing to bite a civilian, Scene sees it just in time, recalling the white-furred monster he faced before. His eyes suddenly turns blue. He moves his hand with the dagger without much thought, throwing it toward the monster's head. His arm swings wildly, scraping the creature's eye with the dagger. The monster's head hits the floor. People thank him, saying they know he has taken down several Biom hunters like this one. Scene reflects that his body moved before he could even think, and he wants to know since when he's had this much power. But the sound of 3 more Biom is heard. The green-haired boy thinks he doesn't know how he did that, but right now he needs to focus on saving the people. At Yisel department store, inside a cafe there, Xiangjin asks if Kayante hasn't found them yet. The boy says he's really sorry, but he was afraid it would take more time. That team leader thinks about needing to capture those guys or do something big because Dong Cheol had threatened him the same way ever since he got the video. Xiangjin says it was all their fault, and Kayante interrupts his superior's thoughts, asking if he heard the noise. The team leader mentions they're in a department store and wants to know why hearing noises is strange, but the young man says this felt different. Both look ahead calmly, next to the company's door. Dozens of people rush into the store. They cry for help, saying there were Biom in a basement and everyone needs to run, while asking someone to report it to the army. Seonjin stands up, asking what that was, and Kayante wants to know what on earth was happening, while the man begs for help, saying Biom were kidnapping others, taking their lives in the basement below, leaving the young man speechless. Seonjin looks at it excited, telling Kayante to gather the team immediately, and he replies that he understood. The team leader thinks luck is on his side and it's time to make his move. Cops outside ask what's going on, while another replies that people are flooding into the department store. The fugitives keep running farther away from there. Muro comments that the people escaped from his slaughterhouse, and Bolty says he left for just a moment, and they can't do anything right. The blonde Biom now suggests that with the situation out of their hands, they should head to another district. Wanting to know what Bolty was doing, he tells Muro to go ahead without him, because he needs to find what caused this. A parking lot surrounded by dark energy. Someone approaches with heavy steps, stepping over the head of a Biom. Bolty observes what happened, enraged to see his fellow Biom defeated, and says there are intruders, while releasing his energy. Zaya faces a Biom using his sword, delivering a horizontal slash that slices off half its face. Zia keeps walking toward the other biome with a smile on his face. Juan asks if they're sure this is the place where they're hiding since he hasn't seen any high-level ones yet, while Dujin says Bolty wasn't there. Scene arrives and wants to know if everyone is finished there, and Haru says he's relieved that everyone is safe. And now that they've rescued all the hostages, they should get out of that place. The elevator reaches the B3 floor. Bolty complains that this was ridiculously slow. Then he activates his claws and aims at the ground, launching his attack to advance. The blast hits the B4 floor and he drops down to it. The group hears the noise and wonders if it was an earthquake. Haru suddenly turns, sensing what energy that was since it clearly came from a high-grade biome. Then he tells everyone to stay alert because another biome is coming. They all look at the tunnel that led into that room, where smoke starts to pour out. A blast of energy hits the area, throwing the group members far away. Haru grunts while trying to endure the blow, but then opens his eyes. Bolty says that just as he thought, there were guests who weren't welcome, wondering if he's the one who ruined his playground. Zia thinks that this is an incredibly threatening aura, and Juan recognizes this biome. Haru, Juan, and Dujin realize that this is Bolty. Everyone prepares their attacks as soon as they notice, firing arrows and projectiles at Bolty. Zeha and Scene try to endure the recoil along with the dust. Bolty moves his claws to disperse the dust, while Dujin and Haru withstand it. The biome asks if they really thought 3 or 4 humans would be enough to hurt him. Haru's rope falls to the floor. He takes the hit from the attacks afterward. Dojin watches in confusion, then calls out for Haru. Zeha and Scene watch with dark expressions. Bolty points his claw at the two of them and Juan, saying that he's next. Juan steps forward, saying he'll distract him and Zeha should take the chance to save Haru. He spins his spear, gripping its base tightly. Juan prepares to advance. Bolty notices something different in that moment, because the spearman was already close to him in less than a second. The spear emits a cyan aura and Juan attempts a thrust called Tiger's Fang. Bolty realizes how strong that attack is and blocks with his arms. Juan moves his feet next with a spin, looking at Bolty with hatred and going for his next move called Tiger's Rush. He retreats afterward as dust fills the area when it starts to settle. Zeha asks if Haru is okay and tells him to please wake up, while the deity just calls out to the blonde, saying they should be careful because he's a high-level biome. Transformed, Bolty says it was impressive for the spearman and gives him credit for that. Destroying the wall just by moving his arm, a massive cloud of dust moves toward the group. Dojin and the other 5 try to resist. Bolty says he'll make them pay twice as much for freeing his prey behind his back, and they only had 5 minutes left before the place completely collapses, so they should enjoy the fun. At the Yeasel department store, a tremor hits the area. Bolty focuses his red energy into a single point, preparing to launch it like a blast. Scene complains that the air is being sucked into that point. Dojin recognizes what that skill is, telling everyone there to run, but Bolty says it's far too late for that. Launching the attack toward all 6 of them, a massive explosion happens in the area where it hits. Zeta tries to endure it while shielding Haru's body. Dojin protects Scene with his back. Juan blocks the blast with his spear, asking if everyone is okay. Bolty says that he was worrying about others while he was still there, so he really must have underestimated him, striking his chest with his monstrous claws. Bolty pulls the claws out right after, kicking Juan's body away, sending the spearman crashing hard into the wall, and he says he should take on the most annoying one. So only 3 are left for him to face, while Dujin fires at him, calling him a bastard. Bolty deflects the bullets like they're nothing, and says that toy was useless, though it made a lot of noise, and wants to know if that's all he can do. Dojin pulls another weapon from his vest, throwing dozens of grenades toward the biome as he shouts for him to take that. Bolty looks up without reacting as the grenades emit a gray aura. An explosion erupts in that area and engulfs even the biome. Dojin says he hopes Juan is alive, because the smell of beast flesh burning is in the air, and he hopes it worked this time, since many months have passed since his friends lost their lives, and he waited with everything he had for this moment to come. He throws his 2 pistols to the ground and draws his bluish rifle. Dojin asks his friends to wait just a little longer, because even if he eats dust today after this, he'll put an end to all this misery chasing them, and he'll go to them after he defeats every last biome. Bolty lies injured on the ground, laughing and saying it wasn't half bad, it hurt a little this time, but he wants to know how much longer he plans to play hide and seek with him. Multiple projectiles hit Bolty in the forehead and chest, making the biome bleed. The bullet heading for his forehead shatters. He wonders what that was because his aim was still dead on despite all the smoke in the way. He fires off a volley from his claw, and complains because the smoke has only gotten thicker, telling him to stop hiding and show himself because they're just little rats. Dojin thinks those bullets can pierce armored cars but didn't go through his skull, so he figures he should aim a little below the chin. Bolty uses his ears to sense where the danger is coming from, and says he finally figured out where he is, hearing the sound of the gun, saying he hit the bingo, while Dujin just focuses on firing as the claw closes in. A blue energy suddenly appears, stopping Bolty from hitting the shooter, and severs Bolty's hand from his arm. The body in the smoke begins to appear. Juan merely murmurs Bolty's name while drawing his next energy arrow. That shot grazes his ear. Juan complains that he dodged, and Dujin says he can't believe it. He really is a monster. Bolty says it's impressive, and that energetic humans like him make the hunt more exciting, and it increases his appetite. Juan and Dujin both feel the same. They can't leave that place without taking him down. They both move into the smoke from different sides. Bolty bites his finger while wondering who he should go after first to enhance the taste. Dojin reflects that a shot below the chin would be fatal, and he'll take the chance when Juan goes in. But now with the smoke clearing, they don't have much time left. The smoke fades, revealing the two shooters. Dojin says it's over for him, but Bolty says he won't lose to him this time as he appears behind the shooter. Juan calls out Dujin's name, but Bolty strikes his chest with his claws. The blow creates a burst of smoke. Some rocks fall to the ground. Dojin is badly wounded against the wall. Juan watches the blast from Bolty's strike. He repeats Dojin is hurt. Looking over at Juan, also injured, Scene is thrown to the ground. Zeha is trying to heal Haru, who was hit by Bolty. Juan says it's all his fault since this happened because he asked for their help. Bolty starts to materialize another hand while laughing, saying there's no need to be sad this time. He'll be joining his friends soon enough, because that's just the kind of person he is. Juan wonders what he did wrong, because all he wanted was to save his sister, and if he hadn't gone to practice and spent time with Juhi, she wouldn't have been kidnapped by a Biom the next day. Juan should have spent more time with her if that hadn't happened because he never took her to the places she wanted to go, remembering Judy's promise. He says now he has no promises to keep, no family to protect, and no dreams to fulfill, because he has nothing, and says this might be the perfect moment to give up. He looks down with no hope in his eyes, but Zia blocks Bolty's strike with his sword, saying that the two of them should go together. Juan repeats the name Ziha, and the swordsman says that he's not just going to give up, because his sister would be disappointed to see him like that. Juan begins to tremble as he holds his bow. Energy emanates from Haru's string. The deity moves to strike the Biom, but he dodges. He says that surely a great evil will happen if Bolty walks away alive, and they must end this now, and Ziha takes a stance and says he will take his last breath here. Bolty cuts the strings with his claws, while asking if they really thought that adding another person to the fight would turn the tables. Juan says they won't know until they try, appearing behind Bolty ready to strike with his spear. The Biom narrowly dodges the charged attack, and thinks he definitely hit him in the heart. Juan tells him not to be surprised because no one would die from a scratch like that. Dojin fires several rounds with his precision rifle, which fly toward Bolty as Juan runs. The Biom wonders if that gun-wielding human came back too since he's using that same useless trick again, but he's too dizzy to dodge, so he puts his hand in front of the bullet. But Bolty's palm is pierced. The Biom is hit repeatedly by all of Dujin's shots, writhing in pain after being wounded like that, and asks how a human weapon could work on him. Pillars start falling to the floor. Bolty says he's not regenerating fast enough and needs to eat to restore his energy. Dojin tells them to keep shooting because the building won't hold for much longer, and Zia says they need to end the fight as fast as possible. Scene suddenly opens his eyes, looking at the immense string spirit of Haru and Zia charging toward Bolty. He wonders what in the world is happening. Bolty breathes heavily as he tries to stay alive. Haru tells Scene to run away before the Biom reaches him, but when Bolty is about to pierce him with his claws, Scene rises to react, thinking he never wants to feel that agonizing sensation again. Being trapped by fear ends today, and Scene lands several slashes on Bolty with his jeweled daggers. The Biom hits the ground, triggering a cloud of dust. The building's pipes were ruptured. As the smoke starts to clear and Bolty's claws return to normal, he denies what's happening, repeating it several times, because he let his guard down too much, and if that toy weapon hadn't hit his eye. But he notices something there, wondering if it could be flesh. But in the end, it's Zahu with an already lifeless expression. A bug lands on the fallen Biom's eye. Bolty repeats Zahu's name, and a shadow takes over his back. The man who had been bound in chains is now standing, and had fed on the Biom. Juan comments that Bolty was strong, but he won't survive once the structure collapses, and they need to hurry and get out of there. Scene looks back, worried. Bolty gets up and says the flesh he gave Zahu kept him alive and breathing, but wants to know how because he must be hungry just like Zahu was. But that didn't matter now because he would just enjoy his meal. The Biom opens his mouth next. That man repeats that he is a Biom, and remembers the people begging not to lose their lives because they had families and children waiting at home. That biome was the beast who brought people to this place just to cause a mass slaughter. The same one who brought him there, beat him, starved him, deprived him of sleep, and caused him immense pain. It was that same biome, and so the man breaks free from the chains. Bolty opens his eye, now a bit hesitant, while trying to choke the human with his claws. But this man opens his eyes like those of a beast, striking Bolty in the chest right after. The man's hair begins to transform, and Bolty wonders what that was, until the man becomes similar to a biome. Bolty wants to know what was with that man, because he thought he was human, but now he looks like a biome, wounding Bolty's abdomen once again, throwing the monster into the wall. Zia keeps running and leads his group through the passage, warning that it's collapsing faster every minute, and they need to hurry. But Scene hears a scream and wonders if it came from Bolty. The blonde tells him to hurry and move while the green-haired man says something's wrong. That human transformed into a biome strikes the ground, breaking everything. Looking at Bolty coldly, the biome spits blood on the floor before looking back at the man. Looking straight ahead afterward, he says it was very impressive, but it left him no choice since he was saving that for the destruction of Sin's side butt. The entire building is destroyed right after that strike. Bolty now had paws instead of legs, and his body had turned beastly. His face resembled that of a tiger, and he was drooling, saying that man's end would come right at that moment. That man runs toward Bolty. The beast mocks him, seeing how he charges without realizing their powers were on completely different levels, latching threads onto the hand of the transformed man, before he can land a hit on Bolty's transformed face. The clash of blows is intense and destroys the area even further, shattering everything in the path, collapsing parts of buildings on both sides. The biome grits his teeth as he tries to endure it, moving his foot as he steps forward, but he steps in blood immediately afterward. Bolty prepares to strike the man with his beastly hand, landing a direct hit to his face, launching him far away as he charges once again. Bolty says that if he had known he needed to eat, he wouldn't have wasted his time and would have just destroyed him on the spot. That man crashes into the wall, shattering the one behind and tearing holes through the structure. He was already back in his human form instead of a monster. Bolty looks at the center of all the holes in the wall, but something hits his mouth, making him spit up more blood. The creature says this is bad and that he should lie low for now, holding his abdomen to avoid further injury. The group encounters an explosion in the wall. Zeha asks what that was, seeing the man flung through the air. He crashes to the ground unconscious moments later. He asks what in the world that was, while Dujin wants to know if he's breathing, and Haru says there's no time for that. They have to escape now. The shooter says he'll help and should carry the man on his back, and Zeha agrees, lifting him up. Then grabbing the man's shoulder, a sphere of light envelops the entire group. That voice says it will lead the way, because it will defeat every biome with the sword of death. And Dujin questions what in the world that was. The voice says it will bring peace back to their land, and Scene recognizes what it is, but a massive light envelops that area. At the same time, in the basement of the Yisel department store, the tumors that were at the entrance, one of them opens an eye moments later, beginning to squirm in order to crawl out of that strange tumor, emerging from a beastly mouth inside it, while the creature continues trying to escape, now becoming a full beast completely free from the tumor, a spiky biome with a humanoid shape as well. The creature appears behind the group, slowly twitching its snout, at the Yisel Tower in Shinsei. There was a kind of bar inside with music playing. Several people eat while snacking, most of them wearing suits. A man in a blue suit says he can't help but thank the gentleman for taking time out of his busy schedule, and his colleague says he's a man of taste. Splendid, really. Wandong thanks the congressman and says he'll prepare an even better meal the next time they meet. The congressman asks if he plans to continue rewarding the biome hunters, and Wandong replies he has nothing to worry about. In fact, the rewards will increase. One of the men comments that he's already done more than enough for the people's safety, and any effort is commendable. Wandong says, just as he mentioned, he notices the General of Commissions seems to have something on his mind and asks if the food isn't to his liking, and the man says no, of course not. Wandong asks him to share his requests since he'll help as soon as he can. The general says he read him like a book and will speak honestly. He treats the city like people. But several departments have been coming to him lately, and the president asks if he's talking about the biome attacks. That general explains they found various pieces of evidence regarding the biome, and before, they left signs of attack at the scenes, blood, claw marks, but not anymore. And now they found nothing but footprints at recent crime scenes and suggests it's as if the victims are being abducted alive, which is ridiculous. But he thought they'd have some peace for a while and tells the president to consider this the ramblings of a drunk old man, and the man in the red suit says he's already done plenty. But he tells the old man to calm down as he turns into a glass of wine. Wandong agrees, saying that what they were developing at Yisel could be helpful. All the suited men look at him nervously, while an employee picks up a phone, calling someone repeatedly. The suited men receive an app, and one of them asks what it is, and the president explains it's an app called Hunter that allows them to locate hunters in the region. That suited man says the president never disappoints, and the one beside him says the Yisel group represents the city. The president says it's nothing and asks them to keep helping him protect Shinsei, and the suited men agree. Outside, several luxury cars are parked. The general gets into his car and notices something strange. His driver asks if something's wrong, and the general says he left his phone behind, but the driver suggests he go to his master. The old man says there's no need since he doesn't even know where he left it, and will get it himself, asking the driver to wait. He heads back into the Shinsei department once again. The general says the lights are off and wonders if everyone has already left, but notices one light still on in one of the rooms, wondering if the president was still there. He sees a figure with horns on its head, biting into a human leg while feeding in that room. The monster controls the blood coming from that weapon. So the general says that the monster is devouring a person and demands to know what in the world that thing is. The monster swallows the leg next. That was undeniably a monster. The general draws a pistol from his waist as the president appears and asks about him, and the general says he's glad the president is okay. The president asks what kind of matter brought him there, but the general tells him to be careful because there's a monster inside and he's going to handle it. Wandong smiles, saying that calling it a monster was a bit harsh, and the general is shocked by that response. The president says that they were humans too. The general begins to tremble and wonders when the monster got so close. But Wandong approaches the creature and says that, in any case, humans were closer to monsters. The general is speechless. Then the president continues, saying they were not only insolent humans, but arrogant and hypocritical, and they don't know how exhausting that emotion is for them, because they think they're closer to the ideals of humanity they always talk about, asking if the general had any thoughts on that. The old man asks if it's really true, wanting to know how shocking it is to find out that the most confident man in the city was actually a monster, firing repeatedly at Wandong, but the bullets just fall to the floor with no effect. The general's hands tremble as he holds the weapon, and he says it can't be, because that gun was specially made for Biam. Wandong transforms his appearance and speaks to his child, saying it's time to eat, and so the creature opens its mouth to attack the general. Wandong comments that, either way, this birthing chamber was discovered earlier than he expected, and he thought he had made the best of the best. But in any case, it didn't matter since he could build a place like this anytime, repeating that he could make all of this again anytime. Outside the building, people in green boots approach, saying the structure was collapsing. They wore butterfly tiger jackets, and Seonjin asks if everyone is ready, because they're going to hunt the Biam in this basement. Civilians scream that it's butterfly tiger, and ask them to deal with the Biam, relieved that they're here. Seonjin reflects that once he handles this job, Dong Cheol will start seeing him differently. But an explosion shakes the structure of the building. The man repeats something about the structure, because he bets that it took out all the remaining Biam down there. The smoke starts to clear, as stones fall among the steel beams. One of the butterfly tiger members looks back and sees someone coughing, wondering who they were, because Zaya comes out holding Haru, and Sin is by his side. Juan walks beside Juan, who's carrying the man, and Dujin with his hands in his pockets. Zia says they finally managed to finish it. The building continues to be devastated. Kyung-ta comments that it seems like more people were involved in this. Seonjin notices who's approaching, saying they're the ones he met back in District 5, and Sin is leading the people. The group leader notices that Dujin is with them. Kyung-ta asks if those weren't the thieves their leader had mentioned earlier. Rain starts to fall from the sky more intensely, and Seonjin says honestly, they were a thorn in his side, thinking he lost his soul and reputation because of them, and he's not sure he can handle Dujin. But things got worse ever since he met Ziha, and everything fell apart because of him. Kyung-ta says they saved a lot of people in the explosion, and now, with the rain and no one left to retreat, they should just leave. But he notices Seonjin moving his arm forward. A gunshot is heard. People in the crowd start running after Seonjin fires. Dojin wonders where that shot came from and if another Biom showed up, while Juan wants to know if everyone is okay. Seonjin glances back for a moment, and the shooter recognizes that guy. Jun asks if everyone is okay, and Sin agrees, but blood drips onto the ground. Zia realizes he was the one hit by the shot. His vision begins to blur in the middle of the rain. Haru asks if he's okay, telling him to keep breathing deeply and not to move too much. Zia thinks he can barely understand what he's saying, but Haru says they need to take him to the hospital. The blonde remembers his parents being attacked by Biam, and Hupo tricking him into singing the song of release. Zeha whispering the Come Come song, causing the Biam to reappear in that place. He also remembers his parents, while Hupo smiled and thanked him for breaking the seal. The blonde suddenly wakes up, asking if this is a dream, while Haru at his side wants to know if he's okay, and how he's feeling. Zia wants to know where he is. Dojin says he's at the hospital, and Scene asks if he's sure he can sit up with a bullet in his stomach. Zia questions being shot since he feels fine and wants to know what happened to him. Dojin says it's no surprise he doesn't remember, because who would think they'd get shot after fighting Bion, and Haru agrees, saying he was in shock, showing headlines in the news about the department store shooting leaving one person in critical condition. The reputation of the Butterfly Tiger group was plummeting after the incident, and Ziha wants to know what the Butterfly Tiger did to him. Scene touches his arm, lifting up Ziha's shirt, who asks what's going on. The green-haired man tells him to stop being shy because he's going to take a look at his gunshot wound, and surely Ziha wants to see it too. Ziha tells him to stop acting like a child. Juan asks what the hell is going on, and Scene says the wound happened 2 days ago, but now. Jun comments that it's completely healed, and Scene sarcastically notes how fast a gunshot wound healed. Dojin asks how it's possible for him to regenerate overnight, but Jun says that's beyond power. The ability to heal quickly is one of their many powers. To regenerate that fast, he must either be a Biom or have experienced something that passed Biom powers onto him. Dojin repeats the Biom power thing and asks if he has any proficiency with it. Jun explains that his girlfriend, the one Bolty killed, was a Biom, a very powerful one among them, and that's all he knows about it. Dojin repeats that his girlfriend was a Biom and asks what he means. He says Zeha might also have the power of a Biom. The blonde looks at Haru nervously, but opens his mouth before starting to speak, revealing that his father is a Biom and his mother was a shaman from the Gom tribe who guarded the gate, and begins talking about the lunar calendar on January 16th. Zia told them everything he knew about what happened, from what occurred on Inwang Mountain to how the seal of the Shadow World broke on that day. The story was told throughout the night, and lasted until dawn in Shinsei, and Juan starts to summarize, saying he was born from a Biom father and a shaman mother, was tricked by a Biom named Hupo, and the seal was broken, and Dujin says he didn't even think about that. Scene wonders if Zeha was the one who broke it. A voice asks if the Biom appeared because he broke the seal, pulling the curtain open right after, advancing toward the boy's face and asking if all of this was happening because of him. A sound is heard in Zeha and Hose's hospital wing. Juan asks what he's doing and if the blonde is okay, but Haru puts his hand in front, stopping him from moving forward, shaking his head and asking him not to interfere. Hosu grabs his shoulders, asking if he has any idea of everything he went through because of this, how much he starved and suffered in that Biom house without being able to sleep, and how many people were sent to the afterlife by the Biom right before his eyes, and how he wished to lose his life, rather than keep living in that hell. As time passes in the Shinsei hospital, Scene points the eyebrow toward Hose's face, saying he knew it, he has the same past life, and all of them were the same guy in their previous lives, a hero from a world where Biom and Gom lived. Taba, the hero who protected everyone from the Biom. Dujin asks if he's saying they were Biom hunters in their past lives too. Scene denies it, saying they weren't hunters, they were guardians, and to make it easier to understand, he's going to refer to Taba as himself. The world he lived in was very different from this one, because everyone was different and the Biom were part of the community. The two largest tribes held the balance of power between Gom and Biom. He was a hybrid of the two races, a guardian of the tribes, and protected that world, but there was another guardian who helped keep peace in that land too. And that was Hupo, who was his most trusted friend. But that trust didn't last long because the Biom tribe committed the most heinous crime in their land, murder. Days after that, their actions became more violent, and the conflict between the tribe and the others worsened greatly. Blood brings more blood, and rage spiraled out of control, and eventually, a tribal war erupted. He confronted the Biom tribe with the other representatives, vowing to defeat every Biom with his sword of death, and that he would bring peace to his land. Thus, the war in Shinsei continued for a long time, but in the end, the Biom lost. Taba pointed his sword at Hupo and spoke his final words, telling him to leave Shinsei because he didn't deserve to be a guardian. Ziha looks at it impressed, saying that the story Scene was telling them was exactly what he had seen on the sword. Dojin says he doesn't get it and asks why betrayal caused an endless war, and Haru says that because of his past life, they were now fighting the Biom. Ziha says that thanks to Scene's story, something became clearer. Hupo had been taking the lives of his loved ones for a long time, and he will never forgive the Biom for it. Therefore, he will face the one who started the war, Hupo, and will not allow the Biom to make people suffer any longer. Jun agrees, since they would only hunt Biom who harm humans, and Dujin agrees because that kind of work pays well. Scene says he never imagined a meal would lead to a Biom hunt, but he's in because he can't just sit and watch everything happen. Hosa grits his teeth, saying that accepting something like this without questioning is out of his character. But he introduces himself and tells them to count on him in this, because they should believe he's pretty strong and will be a help to the team. The members of the group celebrate because another strong man had joined them and welcome him. On a cold mattress, Hupo starts tossing as he coughs. He He grits his teeth looking at the wall, but then opens his eyes suddenly, waking up startled. Hyupo repeats Tebe's name and says he was a filthy mutt, because this world is going to fall apart and he'll never forgive him for betraying him. In the center of Shinsei, people go about their daily routines, and Juan suggests that they need a cool name for the team, because he'd been thinking about it, but Dujin cuts in, asking him not to go there. Hosu suggests the name Shinsei Tiger Hunters, and the shooter rejects it, saying they're not a baseball team. The green-haired boy suggests the name Hunter and Hunter, since they're biome hunters, but Dujin doesn't feel it, and Ziha asks what's going on. Sin says they need a good name for the team and asks if the swordsman has any ideas, and he suggests Taba, while Dujin says that would make them an easy target. Haru suggested his kids that the name should be Chakogapsa, and Juan asks what that is, but the deity explains that's what hunters were called in the past. Dojin repeats it and says it means to hunt the biome, and that's not bad. A slight smile appears on his face. Haru nods in agreement, while Ziha and Juan smile at the same time with Juan and Sin. Hosu suggests that now they have a name. They are the Chaco, and they hunt biome. In another street of the city, people walking feel a breeze passing by their side. A biome points out a boy running away, while a hooded man suggests he should fire since he didn't think he should lose to them. Then tells someone in front of him to go ahead and get out of there, and his companion wants to know what about him. The biome joke about that man planning to fight. A rifle shot is fired at the creatures, causing a massive explosion, but the monsters manage to dodge sideways. The man with the weapon keeps backing up, sliding on his back. He says he hates his body for not being able to stand using that gear. People in the group ask the man what that was. The biome were alive and say it was a massive explosion, and being hit by that would have cost them their lives. So they'll take the gear for themselves, and he should resist so he can die in pain. However, a sword is drawn silently. The bangs-haired biome has his head severed, and blood gushes from the other monster's body. Juan and Dujin had landed the shot. Haru helps the civilians, asking if everyone is okay and that they should evacuate safely, and they thank him. The girl recognizes them as the heroes who saved the people at the department store, and the hooded man asks if they're the butterfly tigers or something like that. But a step approaches and Ziha says they're the Chaco team. The hooded man thanks them for the help and says Shinsei would be in serious danger if that weapon fell into the wrong hands. Dojin asks if all of that was gear and recognizes him as Pyori, the arms dealer, and the man asks if he knows him. The shooter says he heard about a merchant selling tons of gear from his backpack, and everyone knows him because he used to make the best equipment. Pyori says he's sure the guy sells all kinds of things, and they all have interesting gear. But he notices something strange about Ziha's sword. He's shocked when he looks at it and says it's the sword of death. Then he suddenly runs backward, shouting for everyone to get away from him, and the blonde guy asks what's wrong. Pyori says that he is Tabe, and Ziha is left confused. Dojin asks if he's okay, and Sin wants to know if he just said Tabe, and whether he knows him. The merchant says he does, because he's a cold-blooded monster who defeated every tribe except the Gom of Shinsei after the war with the biome. And to think he was just talking to the babies of the Gom tribe. Juan asks what that means, while Sin says Tabea was a hero who fought against the biome. Pyori tells them not to talk like they know anything, because the man who was banished is right there in front of them. He's from the Dujiri tribe that lived since ancient times. He reveals his appearance and says he is living proof. Haru repeats the name Dujiri tribe and says he can't live outside the Shinsei area, then asks how he survived and if he also went into the shadow world. Pyori says not to talk about that because he's no longer a person. They saved his life, but he won't risk his tribe. Then he receives something on his watch and says he's been there too long and needs to go make another deal. He lifts the backpack onto the shoulders and tells them to call him if they need weapons, and Zia repeats that he was from another tribe, and Sin agrees. Thinking that Tabea was a cold-blooded monster who exiled everyone, he wonders how to explain the past life he saw. Elsewhere in the city, in the abandoned factory of District 6, some biome walk along the path, heading inside the structure there. Suddenly, a huge explosion happens. Debris crashes to the ground afterward. Hyupo is sitting on a throne, and a girl talks about the dust, while a white-haired man warns Hara that she's beneath the master. The man asks if he had dreams of Tabe again, and Hara suggests he's been working too hard lately. Hyupo says he's fine, and that terrible dream will vanish when he destroys Shinsei. That white-haired man doesn't understand, because he once promoted peace with his master, but now he turned against the biome tribe. And if it weren't for that incident, they would have had peace with another tribe. But an attack reaches both of them and the man stops talking, clearly tense. Hyupo says they reclaimed their land for revenge, that their brothers and sisters wasted time locked away in the shadow world and can't forget it. Because perfect revenge is his duty, and that is his great cause. The scorching summer came not long after Team Chaco was formed. A Biom carrying a person on his shoulders attacks while Dujin complains that it's hard to shoot with all these obstacles, but Hosu says he'll take care of it. A Biom asks how these Biom hunters are grouping up so fast. The man just stares coldly at him. The creature says it doesn't matter and that he should have left before that worm showed up, but his hand gets trapped by a chain. Hosu charges with his scythe, rescuing the man from the creature's arm. He gets closer to the monster, faster and faster. Zia says he's really something, and Haru says he's kind of skilled with that strange gear. Juan says there's another rescue mission. Scene asks how many Biom there are since it's his third hunt, and Juman says the number of cases went down thanks to the app. He presses the button on the Hunter app, approaching 200 meters. A few days ago, President Wandong of the Yisel Group launched an app called Hunter to the public. It allowed people to send help requests to nearby Biom hunters. It boosted hunter efficiency and motivated them to save more people, and as a result, there were fewer cases. Everyone wanted to have this app. It also had a chat window, and an anonymous user asked if there were any hunters around. People kept saying that this app was the best and that they stayed alive thanks to it. They commented that the app was paid because hunters are greedy and charge 5 million for their service. One of them said people were taking advantage of good things and wondered how they could call them bad when they risked everything to save lives, saying that anonymous one was definitely a Biom hunter, while the man watching claims he is not. Users keep arguing with each other because of this conversation. Wandong says that humans never learn and never change, asking how funny it is that they try so hard to bite each other, because they entertain themselves the same way as before. The monsters drool while the president walks. Wandong tells them to be patient because soon there will be a feast. People comment that it was hot and the others were late, so they should wait inside, eating ice cream, but can't wait for the downfall. Juan asks if it wouldn't be cooler if he took off his coat, and Dujin says no because it was a gift from his friends with his first paycheck. The moment he takes it off, he would lose his life. Juan says he looked pretty alive when he was taking a bath, and the shooter asks if he wants more ice cream. The man just stays silent, asking if Dojin can smile like that, and if he doesn't miss his friends. Dojin looks out the window thoughtful, watching a child with their parents as he says that every time he was walking, sleeping, or talking with them, he felt like it was his friend speaking. And to be honest, their favorite place was this ice cream shop, and when they were young, they dreamed of getting rich and making their own ice cream. Juan apologizes, saying he didn't mean to bring that up, and Dujin says it's already passed, and he's living with what he has. And if he were the one who had lost his life, they would wish him the best, so he's trying to live a good life believing they wanted the same for him. Juan repeats about wishing him the best, looking at his own reflection in the window, and he asks about that, if his girlfriend wouldn't hate him for eating, smiling, and living a life without her, calling Nere's name. Juan looks at himself, immersed in his reflection, but his phone rings for a moment, and he takes it out of his pocket to answer. Looking at the app and saying it was a request from the hunters, Dujin says the app helps and all, but it could be a prank, and Juan agrees, since he thought the conflict between hunters and civilians got worse when they started asking for payment, and there's no reason to make fake requests. Dojin asks where it could be, and Juan says it's nearby. Both start running while the shooter says if it's another scam, he'll hunt them down and kick their asses, heading toward a part of the city that was empty until now. They say it was close by until they're called. The duo hears a sound of someone in pain. Dojin runs there while Juan follows him, saying he hopes the person is okay, but they find someone being strangled by a Biom. The man says they took too long while being attacked by the white-haired man and Hara. The girl says they took too long and were fools, while the masked man says they must be the hunters. Dojin asks who they are, while Juan tells him to be careful because these Biom aren't like the ones they fought before. The shooter says he'll take care of the white-haired one, and Dujin should handle Hara. He then fires energized projectiles at the Biom, causing a massive explosion in that area. The shot only approaches the white-haired man as he slowly turns his face, but blocks the shots by quickly moving his hand. Juan and Dujin are impressed by that, asking how that happened since that bullet worked on Bolty. The white-haired man tells them to leave as he lets go of the victim, because they should turn their backs and pretend none of this happened, since they'll never get back the Hyoseo, empowered by affection. Dojin and Juan ask what he's talking about, wondering if he's telling them to just leave. Hyoseo says that's exactly it. Dojin tells him not to be ridiculous because a Biom hunter will never run from a Biom. The white-haired man wants to know if that's all and says he's sure Dujin understands the Biom, so he can't just let him walk away. But now he'll see what he did to his mind, telling Hara to take care of the other, and the girl asks how she should know which one to fight if he says it like that. Hyoseo says it's simple, while Juan lowers his head. The Biom attacks him and says the other will be Hara's target. They both fight at incredible speed, moving back and forth. Dojin says he didn't expect it to get this intense. Hyoseo and Juan keep fighting at unbelievable speed. The shooter starts sweating and complains that he lost sight of the two, and that's bad. But Haru wants to know if he was looking somewhere else too, because he was her opponent. Dujin blocks with his weapon. The guy complains that he would have been hit by that strike if he hadn't been talking too much. Haru tells him to keep his head up, while trying to attack again, charging forward. The shooter takes aim, saying she was unbelievably strong. He aims at her shoulder as the woman charges at him. Haru wonders what that thing was. As the guy hesitates, aiming carefully, the woman says she gets it. He must be holding back because of that thing. Then she smiles, asking if he'd like to take the fight somewhere else, and Dujin asks what her plan is. The girl says she won't gain anything here since there are humans nearby, and she doesn't want normal people to get caught in the fight. Dojin says she's being cautious for a biome, but both of them leap away to a different place. A spiderweb clings to the wall of an abandoned building. Haru says that place should work, since they can fight without anything in their way. Dojin notes that fighting in the center could have benefited her and asks why she'd do this. Haru explains that only the weak fight using tricks like that. She's strong enough to win clean and fair. The shooter says she's not like the other biome and wants to know her name, since he's Dojin. The girl says she goes easy when it's just about names, introduces herself as Haru. Dojin says he'll remember her name, but that doesn't mean it'll be easy. They both lock eyes. Haru activates her claws and charges at Dojin. An explosion erupts in that abandoned building. Juan's spear hits the ground. He climbs on top of a pole while staring down Hyoseo. The lancer keeps striking repeatedly, but the biome dodges every time, saying his technique is really good. But his body is too weak to keep this up, and he asks where he learned to use a spear, because those skills aren't human. Juan strikes the biome with his tiger fang technique, but the creature blocks it, saying he thought the kid had a relentless spirit, but he shouldn't look away. The boy gets kicked by the biome, saying that too much courage is nothing but reckless bravery, and it's been a while since he's had a good fight like this, so he'll spare his life as thanks. Wondering what Haru might be doing now as he turns around, Juan radiates a green energy from his body, barely standing as it happens. Hyoseo tells him not to be too hard on himself, since he hasn't even used his full power yet, but he's still untouchable for humans. Juan thinks he won't do that. He needs more power, because he has to be strong enough to protect the ones he loves. He just wants power strong like Nerei's, emitting an even stronger aura as he imagines it. Repeating out loud that he needs just a little more power, Hyoseo recognizes the energy coming from his opponent, but Juan charges, cracking the ground beneath him. The boy's spear closes in on Hyoseo's face, only to be blasted away by a single explosive strike that breaks everything in its path. That whole central structure shakes from the blow, but a figure appears, emerging from the cloud of dust. The biome says it's unbelievable that a human had so much strength in a single attack. He would have lost his life if he hadn't transformed a second before the strike, finding a lancer as strong as Nerei. The two now stand face to face, ready to keep fighting. Juan asks if he mentioned Nerei. Something touches the boy's shoulder. Nerei hugs him and apologizes for keeping him waiting. Juan thinks she's a biome and his girlfriend, but because she lives in the shadow world, they could only meet once a year. He longed to see her every day once the seal broke, but the conflict between humans and biome had worsened a lot, and when she tried to protect him, Nerei lost her life at the hands of Bolty. Juan grips his spear tighter, getting ready to attack again. As he charges at the biome, the spear approaches, sending a light breeze toward the monster. Hyoseo wonders why he's feeling Nerei's energy coming from this boy, but says there's no way he could be her. They're different races and genders. Juan asks if he knows Nerei, and Hyoseo stops the spear with his finger, remembering the girl saying they might forgive the Gom tribe, because once she met a child who didn't fear him and smiled sweetly, because he made a biome friend and planned to take Hyoseo to meet her next time. The young man asks how he wouldn't know someone so peculiar, as Nerei used to talk about how she could forgive the Gom tribe after the seal broke, and she made a Gom friend. But he hasn't seen her since the seal was broken, although he heard her name come from this boy, and knowing Nerei, he must be the child she spoke about, because she said that once the seal broke, she would live with him, and it seemed like her dream had come true. He introduces himself to Juan and asks if Nerei never mentioned him since he was her favorite biome, and the boy wonders what was up with him, wanting to know the boy's name, and he introduces himself. But Hyoseo asks where Nerei is. Juan says his girlfriend lost her life. That biome is in disbelief upon hearing the news, grabbing his shoulder while trembling, wanting to know if he took her life. An energy begins to radiate from the area, showing the monster's rage. Juan says that Nerei died protecting him from a biome named Bolty, and acknowledges that the biome tribe decided to kill humans. Hyoseo is shocked upon hearing this. His voice trembles before he starts to speak. He says it's plausible that she could have died to Bolty, since he hates the Gom tribe more than anyone, but he never imagined Bolty could defeat her. He asks if he knows where Bolty is, and Juan says no, because the last time he saw him was in a department store that got demolished. Hyoseo apologizes for that, radiating energy as he walks away. Dojin throws a bomb that starts emitting smoke while spinning. He fires repeatedly at Haru. aiming to injure her. And when the girl passes through the door, she finds a grenade pin, causing a massive explosion in that room. Dujin thinks she was buying time so he could find a hiding spot and wonders if it was that easy for her to hunt. Haru turns her face toward where the boy is. Dujin says she found him again, and the explosion should have taken her vision and paralyzed her sense of smell, but she must have some skill that lets her detect things. He runs away from her right after, but the girl was ready to strike, rushing in with an extremely fast punch. She hits Dujin in the chest, making the boy spit blood. The shooter is thrown far away, crashing into a wall and breaking it. Dujin thinks about how, if he were strong, Haru charges toward him again to strike once more. The shooter thinks that if he were of mixed blood or had a Biom girlfriend, he'd be stronger than this, because he was the worst, wishing for things he knows hurt his friends. That blow from Haru destroys yet another wall in the building. She says she hates traitors, but not those who gratefully accept their own departure. So she tells him to go home before running into another Biom at this hour, since she struck right beside Dujin. The boy says he didn't understand. How could a Biom walk away without even taking a human life? As night fell in that Shinsei district, Muro asks what Bolty was doing there, and he says to look at that place, because the tree was similar to the Shindinsu they had in Shinsei, and the other Biom tells him not to fall for a dumb tree made by humans. Bolty says they were helping that human, but Mara replies it was just coexistence, since both sides benefit, but the blonde Biom asks what exactly he gets. Maro thinks that just like his friend said, that man was completely mysterious. Wandong, the human who ruled Shinsei, was the same one who made them kneel like they were nothing, and he was strangely strong, wondering why he asked them for this. Because above all, it was strange that he created that app, since he put many of his brothers in danger. Maro says he seems to cooperate with both sides, and when you stop to think, it's contradictory. He wonders what Wandong might be planning. A monster keeps eating meat, but notices something different when it opens its mouth, saying that its father should have some too. Wandong repeats the part about being called father, saying that Jingwei could even talk now, and his father was very satisfied with that fact. At the Chaco headquarters, Haru, Ziha, and Juan were sitting on the couch. Hosu approaches, coming out of the bathroom with wet feet, saying it had been a while since he felt so refreshed, and Sein asks if it was okay to use this place as their headquarters. Juan says he shouldn't be stingy when rest is important, and Hosu comments that he was a national archery athlete, but also generous. Zia tells that Juan and Dujin were very late, and would go look for them so the others could eat, and Hosu asks if they wouldn't be arriving soon. However, the young man says this was bothering him, but he would be back soon, and Haru suggests she would join him. Hosu asks what Juan was doing, and he says he will wait for them, but the chicken wings will get cold. Hundreds of skulls and a demonic figure hold Hupo with its fingers, saying that he was the guardian of Shinsei, and asking how he could disown them, since he knew he never believed in the Biom tribe in the first place, calling him a murderer while a voice asks for Hupo's help. Taba suggests they make sure Shinsei is safe together. Hupo suddenly wakes up thinking about his old friend, saying he will never bring peace without appeasing the grudges of those who were betrayed and his servants call their master. The Biom master says he wasted his time with meaningless sentimentalism and Shinsei must be swift, because he is no longer the guardian of this city, and once he conquers it, it will be his revenge. An explosion happens, and Yuviap asks if they were fighting. Hupo tells Jikshu to wait there because he has reports from Hyoseo and Hara for him, telling Yuviap to follow him, and so he does. In the calm of that city, a dark figure appears saying that they seem to be having a party there. The Biom ask what that was, and if it was a Biom hunter, but Lord Bolty had said the hunter app couldn't find them. But one of them charges asking who cares because he would take care of it. When approaching that white figure, she simply creates a thread with her fingers, making a spider web at the battle site in a matter of seconds. The Biom without a head says that she just attacked through the wall, but the girl gives a sick smile on her face, saying that this Biom can walk 7 steps after its neck has fallen. The other Biom says she must be kidding him, because his friend was defeated by some threads. Hupo and Yuviap approach the scene next. That Biom charges towards the woman, but she dodges the strike, moving behind him with incredible speed, and smiles behind that Biom, then cutting him with her threads. She asks if Hupo was also there to help, while Yuviap says that she defeated his warriors instantly. Hupo says these two didn't belong to the unit under his orders and wants to know what they were doing beneath him. The girl creates more threads telling him not to worry because she would send him to his allies soon, and Yuviap asks how she dares. With a sick, blood-filled smile, that woman was. But Hupo tells Yuviap to take a step back, because he would take his revenge on her for his Biom companion, throwing his coat in the air as he charges. The girl keeps laughing hysterically while watching her webs destroy everything in their path, but Hupo was behind her with his claws ready, causing an explosion in that immense area. The family that was being victimized notices the threads fell to the ground. The boy asks if she was a biome hunter, and his father explains that she came to deal with the monsters, but the app was still looking for help. The girl says that her father told her biome weren't her enemies, wondering if he lied to her because it really hurts, and repeats she doesn't want to lose her life. Hyupo says that woman is not human. Then the creature transforms, letting out a huge scream. The family covers their ears. Yu-Gi-Oh does the same and says that its roar sounded horrible, but Hyupo remains standing and stable. The creature advances behind him with others of its kind. The biome leader simply notices one of the attacks coming at his shoulder, having his arm devastated by the strike. Hyupo had lost one of his limbs while the other creatures advanced towards him. Yu-Gi-Oh calls for his master while an explosion occurs in that area. Zia and Haru walk through the city until the divinity notices that energy, asking if it could be Hyupo while they look ahead apprehensively. Hyupo continues trying to defend himself even without an arm, while the creature says that he managed to dodge every attack like a little cat, and tells him to try dodging this, gathering its energy in its arm. Yu-Gi-Oh appears behind her asking how those pests dared to cut his master's arm off, and strikes the creature's head. But the strike does nothing, and the woman keeps her dark smile, taking the attack to Yu-Gi-Oh's chest instead of her master's. The explosion throws the biome away immediately, being thrown far from the humans. The woman begins to laugh in the middle of the smoke, saying he was putting her in a difficult situation, and that she can't control her power when in her original form. Hyupo thinks that the power was enough to defeat a high-level warrior with a single hit, and he had never seen anything like it, even in ancient times, wondering what in the world it was, but he says it doesn't matter what she is because he'll destroy anyone who stands in his way. His arm grows back again shortly after. Energized, he prepares to strike the monster. The spider woman asks what that was, striking the monster's stomach at once, and thus destroying it with a single hit. The energy begins to concentrate in that spot, destroying everything in its path. Hyupo stands still with only his forearm focused. A monster tries to attack him, but he dodges and goes to its back. He hits the creature's rib, destroying it with just that. The spider woman says he was stronger than she thought, and she isn't enough to defeat him now. But she wonders if eating a biome would make her as strong as him. Hyupo shouts for Yu-Gi-Oh to wake up now, while the biome begs his master for forgiveness. The spider's claws move toward the creature. Hyupo takes all the blows for his subordinate, shielding him. Yu-Gi-Oh calls out to his master, but he only asks if his subordinate is okay. The white-haired biome cries, speaking about his master's body. The spider says she would have eaten him later if he hadn't jumped in like that before, and now that power is hers, but the spider's hand begins to spark with electricity. The monster falls to the ground, bleeding. She moans a bit before being completely defeated, and so Hyupo also falls toward Yu-Gi-Oh, kneeling beside his subordinate. The spider woman says she needs to eat as she tries to move, because she would eat the Gon tribe last, approaching the humans. She pushes her foot against the ground, rushing toward the people but is stopped by a rope. Haru stops the monster from moving further as she dissolves in the air and asks what that was, bleeding heavily and holding onto the ropes. Zia draws his sword next, cutting the creature just by unsheathing it. The spider simply calls out to her father, and so the hunters manage to deal with the spider. He asks if everyone there is okay, and the mother thanks him, but Zia looks back and sees Hyupo being carried and is in disbelief. Yu-Gi-Oh says the hunters only showed up at this moment. Zia says he finally met him and calls Hyupo's name. That was the enemy who murdered his parents, and his friends lost those they loved because of him, being the main culprit for the destruction of Shinsei. Zia draws his sword and runs toward him. Yu-Gi-Oh blocks with his hands and tells his master to go ahead without him, wondering how he could be so strong being just a mere human. Zia overpowers Yu-Gi-Oh and goes after Hyupo, saying he won't let him escape this time, but a little boy stops him from doing that, saying that man had saved them. Zia holds back his hand from finishing off the biome leader, but tells the child to move because they are biome who attack people and many have suffered because of them. Yu-Gi-Oh stands up and says he hasn't suffered enough because it would take 4,000 years to understand his pain, and they are different from him, who took lives from others without great cause since he doesn't know their history, but it was impossible for the foolish Gon tribe to understand. Zia repeats great cause and says he took the lives of his parents, who were from the same tribe as him. Yu-Gi-Oh asks about that, and Hyupo explains that he is the son of Pungre. The white-haired biome says that's why he's strong, and that he heard he lived on a mountain with a shaman from the Gon tribe, but didn't know about the sun. Haru pulls the child away from Zeha and Hyupo, while the blonde man says it was a great cause, considering he was a member of the tribe taking human lives. Hyupo says he was right and that Pungre lost his life because he left the tribe, abandoning the resentment of the tribe when they were betrayed, and that was a small sacrifice. But once the Gon tribe disappears, there will be no more reason for hatred, and that was how he would bring peace to Shinsei. An energy clash erupts between the two. Zia questions this peace in Shinsei, saying it's funny for him to say that, as he thinks the Biom tribe could live in peace after being the first to betray peace with Taba. Ivyup says he will deal with him, preventing the strike, while Haru warns that he evacuated everyone safely. The Biom with white hair says it was beyond him as he knew Taba, but it seems he had a great painting of him in his mind, and he was the one who betrayed everyone first, for the true traitor was Taba. Zia remembers what Pyori said and looks down a bit apprehensive, saying that even if he is the traitor, it doesn't change the fact that he took the lives of his parents, and if following his own logic, the peace that existed is already over. Both Biom fall silent, but an energy forms up there and says that it was enough. 3 Biom descend from the sky. Haru says they were 3 high-rank ones, and it was certainly a dangerous situation. Hyoseo whispers to Hyupo about Bolty and Mero, and says that it seemed like they were on the front line to the Inwang Mountain this time. He looks to the side, preventing himself from being struck by Ziha. Hyupo tells everyone to hurry because there isn't much time, and the Biom agrees, saying that the blonde was really lucky and should enjoy what's left of his life, then punching the young man's abdomen and throwing Zeha away afterward. An explosion is caused by the damage to the ground, and thus a dark energy envelops all those Biom. Zeta tells them to stop right there while Hyupa looks back, but focuses in front of him when his name is called. Zeta charges toward the dark energy and cuts it with his sword, stopping on the ground when he can't do anything. The young man grits his teeth in anger and screams with all the strength of the remaining hatred. Juan and Dujin approach the scene. The shooter recognizes his friends and asks about them, wanting to know if something was wrong, while Juan asks if they are okay. Haru calls for both of them, turning back, and says that Hyupo was there a moment ago, but they lost him before they could do anything. Dojin repeats that he was the Biom leader, and Juan says that both of them were unlucky to face him face to face. Zia says they are alive, and ironically, it would have been easy for them to take their lives with that kind of power. Wondering what exactly he could do to be more urgent in dealing with them, because he has a bad feeling about this, crows fly over Sinsi's sky. In Hyupo's hideout near District 6, a person turns at Biom's head. She suddenly stops and starts analyzing. Jingwei says they were lucky not to be there right now and wonders where the Biom leader might be, because she was feeling very hungry, and her brothers must be hungry too and should delay the Biom leader's reprimand for a while. But she should say hello to Mero and Bolty, who were feeding her brothers, wishing she could have some kind of meal around there while hundreds of creatures were lying on the ground lifeless. Pyori is surprised, wondering what on earth that was, since the Biom tribe wasn't the only threat in Sinsai. An hour ago, in Hyupo's hideout in District 6, a Biom guides the merchant along the way. His colleague asks what that was, and the tiger explains that he was someone who made weapons in the black market, saying he should look at this because he made most of the equipment used by the hunters. The Biom agrees because he knew about it, and the Gon tribe lost their powers, so seeking the ability to stand against them was foolish, but now there is a reason, and says that holding that same weapon was something he completely forgot after what happened 4,000 years ago, being the Elder's power to bless. Deducting that Pyori must be a Duduri, the equipment he made was incredible, and even after 4,000 years, it still kept the Gom strong. But this made the Biom tribe lose and go to the Shadow World, asking if he knows that the Biom tribe wasn't the only one holding hatred, piercing Pyori's chest and telling him to ask for help from the Gom and Taba again, because he's sure Taba isn't there anymore, and unlike them, he didn't live many years. Asking what that sound was while Pyori's phone rings. The Hunter app detected a Biom near the selected location. With a big step, the butterfly tigers approached that area, leaving the Biom confused. Pyori screams that he was there and needed help, while the Biom wonders how the hunters found out about that place. But the hunters approached slowly. He starts to say something, asking to be saved because there was a monster behind them. Then the hunters explode. Pyori wonders what that was, because near the tiger butterfly bracelet, that blood begins to bubble, forming blood claws shortly after. These claws move toward the Biom, striking the creatures' stomachs and chests, and so Jingwei approaches along with other creatures. The tiger Biom comments that she took the lives of their warriors too quickly, and the other one wants to know what those creatures are because he's never seen anything like them. Jingwei greets the Biom tribe and says she was looking for the leader of the Biom tribe and wants to know if he is there. The Biom questions who she is because she spoke of his master as if he were a friend, while the creature says she has no business with anyone other than Hyupo. Pyori throws herself to the ground wondering where they came from, because they took the lives of the hunters. And now we're doing the same to the Biom. There's a shot of Vicious Aura where they were taking the lives of both Biom and humans. The girl says they were unlucky there and wonders where the leader of the Biom could be. Pyori thinks this is dangerous, and they are very dangerous, because he needs to inform the other hunters of their existence, since there is something whose presence is worse than the biome. In the middle of the city of Shinsai, some people exit the department store. A security guard is in his office and notices something strange coming from there. His colleague tells Kim to get ready for the meeting, but Kim is absorbed in looking for something beneath him. However, he doesn't notice anything and says he's on his way, but there's still a handprint on the wall, and that same handprint echoes a voice asking for help. He wants to know why no one is responding to him since he's losing his life right in front of those two human beings. The boss asks Kim to go to room 4 and he agrees because there are approved documents there, but on the other side, a monster approaches the man, grabbing his head as he pleads for help, being dragged away saying he doesn't want to lose his life. There were eggs with pulsing veins, with different colors, some reddish ones producing booming sounds, and one of the eggs was close to cracking. At the tree in the center of Shinsai, several important men say that the app was doing well and thanks to it the cases had decreased, but it was all due to President Wandong. But they suddenly notice he looks uneasy. Wandong had a sickly smile on his face. At the same time, in a building in District 3, the biome gather and ask if that was the place where they took the lives of the humans, and it was surprising that Bolty and Mero had a secret location. A monster approaches saying he knew everything because his name was Nero, a warrior from Bolty's unit, and he calls for his master as he gets closer. He says there was a human helping him behind the scenes and the tribe's existence might be in danger. Hupo emits a dark aura upon hearing this, telling him to say everything he knows and not leave anything out. Nero says he never imagined a single human could subdue Mero and Bolty with strength alone, and Hara asks about that. The biome says it was strange because he didn't take the lives of any of them even with so much power, and instead, he provided a place to confine the humans. Hara repeats that and says that human is certainly not sane, and he also asks where that guy is now. Nero explains he was beneath the building, but now he's at the Yisel Tower, and the other biome ask where he has proof of such nonsense. Lord Hyozio should know because he keeps his ears to the ground since he arrived at the Gom tribe. His name was Wandong. It might sound familiar. That man was the helper, and the white-haired biome says he knows him and was after the bounty on their heads. Hupo asked about this man since the bounty on their heads was taking human lives behind the scenes, and it's funny, but he wants to know why they were being threatened. Nero shouts that ever since Bolty and Wandong joined forces, they've been playing with the lives of their brothers and sisters, and that diminishes the warrior's dignity. Hyosio says that circumstantially, that means Bolty really did take Nerei's life. Then asked to be excused, please. He was on a call on his cell phone with someone named Chihuahua. Hyosio asks what was happening with Uviap, but the biome simply says they had lost their lives. Hyosio asks him to repeat. Udiap explains that the high-ranking biome they brought were all lifeless on the floor of the hideout. The white-haired young man asks how that could be, and he thinks someone might have leaked his information and tells his master that they need to find Mero and Bolty quickly. With the dawn of the day in Shinsai, Zeta complains that he lost Hupo once again. Hosta tells him not to push himself too much, as they will find Hupo again if they keep hunting biome. Zia thanks him for his help, and Juan calls his friend, wondering if they could really end up taking Hupo's life, but denies it, saying his followers would come after him for revenge. He thought all biome would be like Bolty, but there was one different, and his name was Hyosio. Remembering his conversation with him about Nerei and his apology, Juan thinks there was more to it and wants to know why he didn't take his life. He also reflects on asking Nerei if she thought about something, and she said that when the seal of the shadow world breaks, she hopes for a world where biome and Gon can coexist. If Nerei hadn't forgiven her tribe, he wonders if she would have tried to take their lives just like Bolty did, but he thinks she saved his life. Scene wonders if there's a peaceful way to reconcile with the biome, and they must at least have some intelligence. But everyone in that room is incredulous about this hypothesis. Hosta says he can't let him say this, as peace with them is meaningless, given that their method of solving everything was to become murderous monsters. Dojun agrees, saying there's no way to reconcile because biome and humans have spilled too much blood. But he wouldn't say all biome are like Bolty, as they've met some biome who don't attack humans and may prefer a peaceful approach. Hosu wants to know what's wrong with the two of them suddenly, and asks if they're having indigestion or something like that. Dojin repeats this and asks what he would do with a biome who doesn't attack humans, because he wants to say that biome have desires to speak out and asks if he will keep trying to defeat this biome. Hosu tells him it's a concrete fact that biome take the lives of humans, and Juan says there may not be biome, like he says. Dujin tells him that if they didn't solve this before, they would have to be imprisoned at a critical moment, and he's sure of all possibilities. Zia looks at Haru, a little quiet, and Juan has his head down. Scene wonders what's with this atmosphere because maybe he shouldn't bring this up. Haru starts to speak and asks if they finally finish talking, and the guys confirm, but the divinity just turns on his TV. Zeta says he's really going to watch soap operas at this hour, and Haru tells Hoza to get out of the way of the TV. The young man walks away and asks if he's going to watch now, and the divinity explains that laughing more while with friends was his intention. Haru yells that it's starting, and Hoza says he didn't get anything with the peaceful method, so he would leave it to them. Scene thinks he didn't expect this kind of reaction, but Taba promised peace with the biome while he lives, only to take their lives with his hands. Someone suggests that they could watch something different this time, and Haru comments that it's impossible because today they will reveal the identity of King's son. But the TV has a loud noise. Haru wants to know what that suddenly was, and if it was some kind of national warning. Having recent news where this morning, President Wandong of the Yusel Group pressures the press with an important announcement. The journalists are filming the president's interview. Wandong says he will regret announcing this because they decided to reduce the reward for biome. One of the reporters says that the reward for biome was important in society and asks why the abrupt cut, and if there's any alternative plan. The president explains that one of the reasons was to cut money because it was causing inflation among civilians, and Shinsei doesn't belong to hunters, but to everyone. But they will reform the system instead, since they were looking at the list of Shinsei hunters, where the hunter apps information was there and determined a ranking based on biome hunts. Juan says they're on the list, and Zeta wants to know what that ranking system is. Wandong says that not only will they reduce their rewards, but they will also keep the original reward for the top 10 teams. Haru yells that in the end, nothing changed and asks why this is more important than his soap opera. Dujin says it's bad because biome are no longer their only enemy now, and Zia wants to know what happened. The shooter explains that people won't be satisfied with the reward being reduced, and in the worst case scenario, the hunters will fight each other for credit. Zia says it's disturbing to know that other people could be their enemies. At the top of Mount Inwang, there was a portal with the same creatures as Wandong, and a structure emerges from within it. Inside the Dujuri tribe's hideout, some members of the race say they were connected and Piori should check the signal. The man says he did it, as the greenish crystals on the wall begin to turn red due to a light. Wandong's creatures were approaching the place. These creatures take the lives of the Dujuri tribe members. One of them shouts that they're under attack and the shutters must be closed. The monster steps onto the blood-covered ground, while the Dujuri flee and one of them aims his weapon. They wait for the member of their tribe to run inside. One of the men asks what that was and how they found out about this place, while Piori wants to know what was happening. That person explains that their home was being invaded, but they didn't know who they were, and the guy wants to know if they found them, but he thinks they're safe for now. Piori recognizes that white creature, saying they were already close as the monsters pound on the gate. A Duduri says their anti-biome shelter is finished. One of the monsters gathers energy in its hand, crashing into the gate once more, and thus opening a gap as the Duduri say the shell has been broken. Piori thinks these monsters managed to breach their barrier. They can easily defeat high-grade biome, but they don't have the luxury to dwell on that now, so he shouts that this place won't hold much longer and everyone must get out of there. Some Duduri say they have nowhere to go and should give up this place, but Piori says they'll be captured. Piori explains that these hybrids will bring destruction, and the promised day of the Elder was approaching, and the war will end soon. But anyway, putting that aside, he says the Gon tribe won't accept them now that Taba is no longer around. A Duduri says that's a strange idea and that he'll regret it, but he'll follow him just because he trusts his judgment. One of them comments it would be better to call the biome hunters using the app or something like that, and his colleague says they were near Mount Inwang, and leaving that area safely would be another problem. So they keep walking and are guided to evacuate from there because they'll find a place with members of the Gon tribe. And finally, after everyone has retreated, a Duduri says they must leave with Piori, but wants to know what he was doing, and the guy says they were stealing his home, and he's not going to let them have even a piece of it. The monsters start pounding the wall and breaking everything in their path. That Duduri realizes what was happening. The creature pierces with its hand, but those two manage to dodge it. In the end, the bomb manages to fall near there. Piori says he lost his bomb. His boss trembles while coughing up blood, telling him to leave now. Because Piori was still too slow, he should hurry and leave immediately, living with the Duduri tribe and calling out to the boy before the monster slices him in half. Piori repeats several times that this situation is crap, and he will take the lives of those creatures no matter what. So he leaves, apologizing while crying. A blue light emanates from outside the place. Haru, who was sleeping, suddenly wakes up, gradually getting up in the silence of the night. He asks what this strange feeling is, while touching the side of his face, saying you're playing the soap opera again at this hour. Zia asks if he couldn't sleep and was really thirsty, but wants to know why his friend won't go back to bed, since he'll be tired for the next day's mission. But he notices Haru is crying. and wants to know why he's crying and assumes it must be because he's absorbed in the television. Wondering if that was to warm his heart, Zia says he woke up because of him but was just going to get some fresh air. Outside the apartment, something on the ceiling cracks. Ziva walks out and says it sounded like Sane's voice, saying that Byung did that to his sister. The green-haired guy says he didn't measure his words earlier and apologizes. Juan starts laughing, apologizing but can't hold back the laughter, yet tells him not to worry because he believes in Sane's judgment. He was just a little confused and realizes that Byung might hate someone having love or family, wondering if he should hate or forgive and try to understand them. But at the same time, he felt a sin. Scene says that revenge brings more revenge, but he thinks differently, because they can forgive and not bring back what was lost, and there are things in the world that simply cannot be forgiven, and he could hate the Byung while being their friend. Juan notices something different with that door. The door, which was previously open, closes. Hosu watches this conversation from the ceiling, not knowing what to say after that. Lights emerge from inside the mountain, creating a starry sky in the middle of Sinsei's night. Haru comments that the lives on Inwang Mountain were losing their lives in a senseless way. An energy invades Scene and Juan's mind. Hosu says that there's something floating in his mind while the voice must not be forgotten. The same happens with Dujin and Juan. Zia hears this voice in his mind saying that the hybrids would bring imminent destruction. Taba and Hupo start walking, and the Gom tells that the Dujuri have a prophecy where a hybrid from the Gom and Biom tribe. Hupo repeats Tabe's name, and he says there's no need to be surprised, because he's not the only one, and his soul was blessed by the Dujuri to protect Shinsei, being the protective spirit of Shinsei even after losing his life. Even with all these things, the prophecy won't change, and he will prevent this from happening if they protect this place together. Hupo says this means everyone could live, but anyway, he wants to know what this monster is on his friend's shoulder, and Taba begins to speak about it, saying it was a life that looked like a cotton ball but had no power to hurt anyone. Hupo says it doesn't matter if it's small and weak, it still needs human blood to survive and should wait a minute. Taba confirms because he's giving his name and tells him not to worry because it's just enough for him to survive, and Hupo says he never thought he would create this. Hupo warns that it's okay if he thinks so, because after everything, no one is better than him. Taba brought peace while signing a pact to protect Shinsei with Hupo. Zea wonders where he was, because in reality he was chained to the Shindansu tree on Inwang Mountain, wondering what he was doing there. The Biom cut the Gom's backs. Taba screams for them to stop, but his voice seems like a whisper, asking why no one was listening to him and if he couldn't break these chains. But he hears a voice saying that it will take the front, repeating that it would take the lives of the Biom with this sword. Taba thinks it's him and wants to know what he's talking about. The fake repeats that he will bring peace to this land, but Tabe screams that it's not him. The people of the Duduri tribe say it would remain peaceful there, but the war with the Biom started, and Agon says he will follow Taba anyway. Tabe thinks they weren't listening to him, but the fake turns his face. The hybrid wonders what that was, while the fake smiles, asking if Tabe has finally woken up, as he's been waiting a long time to thank him, since he doesn't have to worry about Shinsei being destroyed, because he will rebuild it to his liking. Taba wonders what on earth he is, but the monster creates several threads, saying he doesn't have a name, but he gave himself the name Snowflake. In return, because he shared his blood, he will take Taba's life without him feeling pain. He apologizes to Hupo, saying that maybe in the next life, they'll be good friends again, asking for his dear soul dedicated to Duduri to protect Shinsei. Haru suddenly opens his eyes, asking if this memory belonged to Taba. Dojinan opens his eyes, waking up, and the same happens with Juan. Hosub has a headache and places his hand on his head. Scene asks what that was, and Juan questions if he saw the same thing too. Zia tells Tabe that Shinsei will be destroyed soon. Some Duduri walk through the destroyed districts. One of the members asks what happened because there are no Biom there, and the girl questions it's not good for them. It was strange not to have Biom in that district, and she wonders if any high-level Biom were there, but they can't let their guard down. That Duduri asks if Pyori is sure they're following the right path since he doesn't recognize Shinsei anymore. Pyori thinks they destroyed the roads that had passed their recognition, but notices something different, because the Biom hideout was not easy to find, and that meant they might have been located for the last time. Wondering if it was a coincidence, since finding a Biom hideout was a coincidence, and they needed to find a house hidden within the barrier. But he denies it, saying it was impossible, because they could use a GPS like the Biom hunters to arrive first, and he wonders if those monsters can track their function the same way. The voice of those butterfly tiger members asking for help lights up Pyori's eyes, but he tells everyone there to throw away their phones. However, leaping out and breaking stealth, they try to strike a Duduri with their claws, taking him to their mouth, and Pyori thinks it's horrible because he was right and they can track their location through the Hunter app. And he wasn't sure if it was a good thing, but they were relying on GPS. Soon it will be dawn, and they must reach a safe place without a map during the day, because they will build a new secure sound district city, while the day dawns and he is hiding with the remnants of his race. As the day passes, the members of Team Chaco have lunch in their apartment, a hot meal with steam rising from it. The topic at the table this time is about Taba. Dujin summarizes that all 7 of them had a dream about the same thing last night. Scene questions how that happened since it was like memories were floating in his mind, and Juan says he felt like he was Taba. Haru says he was Taba in his past life, and maybe they had a memory of that life last night, but it certainly wasn't just any memory. Scene comments there was something about Shinsai being destroyed, but wonders if Taba really started the war, and Hosu says hybrids brought destruction. He thinks he might be a mix between the Gom and Beyond races, and that it was Zea who released the Beyond tribe, wondering if it could be him this time, but denies it because he didn't break the seal by his own will, and a legend remains a legend if nothing happens. Juan asks if they should find the Duduri tribe since they encountered a legend, and if there was a prophecy, they might be prepared, and Scene says it sounds good to him. Dojin tells them to wait, because they should know. It seemed like Pyori was saying he would go to District 1 and mount Inwang, and that would be like putting a boat to fight against a plane. Juan asks if this blacksmith lived on Mount Inwang, and Juan mentions all the Beyond being there, but Dujin says he has a route for that. Zia says if they were going to the mountain, now was the perfect time. While a news report on TV announces that the Butterfly Tiger Biome Hunter Group took a team of 200 members to District 1 and the cleanup was expected within a month. Zia says they weren't going to save Shinsei from the crisis, and this was his chance to take Kyupo's life. So Chaco decides to head toward Mount Inwang. An energy system slowly charges and was at 72%. Wandong says he didn't expect it to change so fast after the energy source was reduced. Repeating the name Chaco and saying they were the ones who destroyed the department store area, they reminded him of Taba, and their faces brought back foolish memories of the past, smashing the phone and saying he would remember them. The news about the Butterfly Tiger Group is also heard by the president, since the cleanup was expected in less than a month. Wandong says that about 100 or 200 butterflies by the end of the day would still be butterflies, and he doesn't know how the biome are still surviving. It's pitiful, but it was foolish that they risked their lives for money, being more moths than butterflies. In the Mount Inwang area, many people had lost their lives. A Biome hunter faces one of them and tells him to go to hell already because he was his precious 50 million won. But Jikyu simply catches his blade, cutting the man shortly after with a lunge. Jikyu says it's not them because they don't have the power to fight against high-level warriors. Jikyu wants to know who were the ones that took the lives of his brothers and sisters. The group members tremble as they say they can't win. The white-haired girl says they were on completely different levels. Rang Eo wants to know how they could capture them, and Dik Ki says they shouldn't even have fought them. Don Cheol curses those monsters in front of him, saying they are far more monstrous than he expected, and that 200 butterfly tigers aren't enough. Because they could have brought any type of hunter into Shinsai, the residents of the Shadow World would still be safe, and Hyupo decides to go to the city center. In the central systems of Shinsai, Bolty coughs in front of a cage with 2 humans, spitting blood from his mouth. He grips the bars and says that he really needs some meat. The girl begs him to please spare her brother, but Bolty tells her to shut up because he would lose his life anyway. A light appears in front of him. He hears Nere's voice saying that he wasn't helping anyone because she spoke about the creations of humans, and her friend spoke about Wandong. Furthermore, humans created things to compensate for their lost powers. He also remembers Azahu no longer consuming humans to stay alive, as they will live together and in harmony, besides him hitting his head on the ground, saying he wouldn't become a beast. Bolty opens the cage, telling him to shut up, because they were on the Gon's side and he doesn't understand this, telling her not to interrupt as he will have his revenge. The younger brother calls for his sister when she defends him, and blood flies through the air. Several monsters bite Bolty's leg and chest, aiming to take the Biome's flesh. Bolty questions what this is and if they were trying to eat him, retreating from the cage and saying they finally hatched. But he forgot that they belonged to him as well and calls for Wandong with a sick smile. The creature tries to break free while retreating. Bolty bites and removes her arm from her body while saying that he will destroy everyone, Gom and monsters, and everything will be over in the end, along with these 4,000-year-old chains. Jingwei asks what he just did and calls Bolty's name while crying. Inside District 5 of Shinsai, Scene comments that there were no Biome there, and Juan talks about the butterfly tigers hunting through the districts, while Dujin, exhausted, wants to know about this road, because it was hot, as if their weapons were burning, and Zio wonders why it's not cold far from the sun. The young man says he really thought he would lose his life from the heat. Juan talks about looking around the area, and Dujin tells him not to stay too long since he doesn't smell any Biome there. The Lancer goes to the terrace of a broken house. A Biome approaches that place, pouring perfume and saying it was quiet today, and leaders usually don't go out like this, but everyone will hunt while he sleeps. He looks at Juan on top of the building. The young man was observing the area. That Biam lion wonders what a human is doing there, but notices that he was entering that building. The lion says it was good timing because he was getting bored, so if he will just wait for him to enter the building in a tight space like that, he would have no chance of losing him. The building door is locked. The Biam charges inside, saying it's time, and climbs the stairs in seconds. He continues laughing, ready to hurt Juan, but stops suddenly when he sees something. As there are 7 armed people ready to deal with that Biam, the lion starts to stop salivating, somewhat hesitant. Zia draws his sword with his eye turning purple. Dujin prepares his weapon, and so that competition quiets down. They comment that the lion's friends must be nearby, and they need to be careful. The group members continue walking around. Dujin points to something ahead of them, because an explosion happens, throwing something into the air. Zia tells them to wait, as something is heading their way. The figure continues running toward the group. It was Puri, who was crying a lot. Zia recognizes him immediately. While the Duduri keep running away, one of the white monsters keeps chasing them, staying on a bridge while Zia observes. The young man wants to know what those monsters are. Dori asks for help, saying Shinsai is in danger. Zia says he was currently talking to him about this, but looks up as those monsters advance, ready to hurt the swordsmen. An explosion happens in another location. When the smoke starts to clear, Jingli repeatedly asks why he attacked his younger sisters, wanting to know his reason, but Bolty tells her to take her foot off his face first, since her feet stink. The girl keeps stepping repeatedly, angry at the creature. The Bion was suffering, almost lifeless. But someone appears walking and says that he really is a clown. Wandong calls for Bolty and wants to know if his specialty is fighting on the ground. Bolty calls him an idiot and says he came straight for him, and it was very lucky, dodging her final kick, saying it wasn't going to be so easy this time. A massive explosion of energy erupts in that area. He also asks what that was, recognizing a bit of the energy coming from Bolty. He wonders what he could be doing behind his back. Bolty fights against Jingwi, while Wandong watches from a distance. He tells her to stop crushing things for now, because he's going to show something really funny to Bolty this time, streaming a live broadcast of Bolty with a smile on his face. In the center of Sinsa City, the billboards begin to change. A voice calls everyone, and the civilians recognize who this man is, as it's Ziha, member of Team Chaco, who saved the civilians. The broadcast says that the incident at the department store brought a lot of fear, but he captured the person behind the entire event. Bolty retreats, throwing his body backward, wondering how he dodged that, but the shadowy figure manifests beside him, with several tentacles sprouting from his back. Those parts of Huandun were dark before but suddenly turn golden. He tries to strike Bolty, who narrowly dodges, complaining that it was too fast. Since the tentacle was floating in the air, Bolty charges up his energy blast and tells that repulsive creature to eat dust, ready to strike the president. Wandong says he's full of himself, but he's nothing because that was all he could do, creating more tentacles and asking if that's the power of the Biom. The same pierce his arms and legs with ease. Wandong says the show was just about to start. Bolty wants to know what in the world he is, and the president decides to tell him since that Biom won't live much longer, asking if he recognizes the name Snowflake. Bolty says there's no way. A broadcast shows Wandong transformed into Zeha. He repeats for no one to fear Bolty anymore, because he had been captured. He was a Biom who was evading the hunters, and now he was going to execute him and bring back peace to Sinsai, which they had lost to the Biom, and they should enjoy the success of the hunters in District 1. However, he thinks it would be a waste to finish him off so easily, striking Bolty once again and making him scream in pain. One of the hunters shouts to finish off that scum already and says he's doing a good job, but he suddenly turns his head. A woman was trembling in fear beside a tall man. Muro calls out Bolty's name. The woman says he hit her and it would be better if he apologized. The hunter asks if he was being ignored because he probably hadn't recognized him, but he freezes in fear, feeling chills, wondering what was up with that guy because he seems super dangerous. Muro disappears in an explosion of energy that pushes all the civilians away from that place. The creature charges forward in a flash of light to strike. Zia blocks the fist with his sword. The monster turns again while Sin, Juan, and Dujin fight his ally. Jun strikes the monster with his spear while Hosu and Haru hold him with their chains. Zia wonders what creature that was, because its aura was strange and completely different from the Biom. The creature opens its mouth, saying the Gom are boring because they were weak, and it strikes once more, throwing him far away right after. Zeta coughs blood as he's slammed into the wall. The creature leaps on top of him, trying to knock the man out. Haru is distracted and asks about Ziha, while Sin is struck by the other creature. Pyori asks if even 7 hunters aren't enough to defeat these creatures. Ziha mutters that his current power wasn't enough, and at this rate he wasn't even close to defeating Hupo, so he needs stronger power than this. remembering Hyupo's sick smile. Ziha says he needs to search in Taba's memories for the feeling he experienced at that moment. To protect those he loves, Ziha needs to become stronger, drawing his sword and releasing his purple aura. The monster says he really is a resilient human since he's the first to survive an attack. He was indeed strong but still weaker than him. Ziha vanishes from the ground using the dark energy of the biome. The creature thinks he's coming from behind, and the swordsman swings his blade. But it was just a shadow, and nothing happens, because the real attack was coming from below. The creature barely dodges, saying that was actually a little dangerous. But the real attack is Ziha striking him from above. The swordsman tells him to say that again, wanting to know who's stronger now. The creature falls silent at this. Bolty complains that Wandong has grown a lot, and Taba had fed him a sea of blood. The president, transformed into Ziha, says he will finish this now and must cut the monster's mouth, and thus Jingwei accepts her father's order. Bolty tells her to wait a little. Wandong asks if he feels better telling where Hyupo is now. The red-haired biome says no, because he's a biome, and it's bad to lose his life like a pig, but they struck him from behind. Wandong laughs and Bolty does the same. The president says he thought he was the center of the universe, but promises to obliterate his tribe in the most painful way possible. He grips his halberd tighter, releasing dark energy and preparing to strike. But something in that place breaks. Mero invades the place and calls for Bolty. Hyosio was accompanying him and descends from the ceiling. The blonde biome does the same, and the white-haired one says that they were causing trouble even with their master. But Mero tells him to leave the sermon for later, and calls for Bolty, who only calls for his friend. Hyosio says that the red-haired one was in bad shape and wants to know what happened there. Wandong says he really brought his friends, but it's been a long time since he's seen Hyosio and wants to know if Hyupo is nearby. The white-haired one asks if that's Taba, and if he's been alive all this time. Bolty tells him not to be fooled, because even though Taba is strong, he wouldn't live for 4,000 years. Because he's an imposter, and Hyosio repeats this. Wandong advances his tentacles, saying he should have crushed Bolty's mouth. The attacks go straight through Hyosio, creating a barrier, wondering if he was focusing on Bolty because he had underestimated him a bit. Wandong says that both of them will have the same end as Bolty. Hyosio tells him not to be so arrogant because he's simply following his master's orders now, and without that, he should have lost his life in the tribulations. Moro asks if he's the one who made Bolty like this. Jinga was using her phone, but tells her father they should return now, and Wandong asks if so much time has already passed, then leaves saying that childhood is more important than growing up, and entertainment ends there, and he also asks if he's going to run away. Wandong raises his hand to the sky and says he's letting him live for the old times, and they should enjoy Sinside because soon he will reshape it. Since when that day comes, no piece of this land will be theirs. Hyosio wonders what he's trying to say. Inside the destroyed district area, Zia takes the creature's head from its body. Sin and Juan continue advancing toward the other, but the monster notices there's a signal, because his father was calling him. The creatures disappear before Sin completes his strike. Juan asks if they're really running away, and Sin suggests they shouldn't go after them because they'll hide nearby. Pure says he can't believe a monster is stronger than high-rank biome, and it's impressive, but the group wants to know what they are. The merchant asks if they have no idea what this is and says it's good to have found them, taking the camera out from his hood and asking to show something. Zia asks if the biome isn't on the side of these monsters, and Piori tells him they didn't seem to care about another tribe because they have the intelligence to use GPS, and the terrifying ones were those with human forms among the monsters, and even powerful high-rank biome would be destroyed. This is bad because they messed up the city, and now there are these monsters on a large scale, and Zia comments that he didn't believe the legend prophesying the destruction of the city. Pure remembers that he was looking for him and asks the reason for this. Zia explains that they want to stop the destruction of Sinsai by the hands of the biome and wants to know where Hyupo, the leader of the biome, is. Pure repeats this and says that his guess is that he left the places where someone could feel him and questions if he's ever been to Inwang Mountain. The blonde assumes that the mountain is his best bet, and the merchant tells him to take the underground route so they can avoid unnecessary battles, leading them to the Dujiri tunnels and wishing them good luck with the Chaco. Zeta wonders if he will have the ability to bring down Hyupo while protecting the others because a few months ago, he couldn't even fight against a low-rank biome. But he shouldn't have those weak thoughts because it didn't matter whether he would take down the monster or not, because he had to do it, no matter what happened, since he was going to protect his friends and Sinsai. At the entrance of Mount Inwang, Dujin comments that there weren't any biome there and it was strange, and Sin agrees since there were no signs of hunters either. Juhin says that Ziha and Haru lived next to the mountain, and wants to know if they had ever seen the shadow world that the biome created. Haru says seeing it with their own eyes is faster than any explanation, because the biome pier should have been still there, but that place had undergone many changes, and that huge portal was the entrance to the shadow world. Zaya draws his sword from his waist, saying they should go in and stop the biome at all costs. A stone inside that world was intact, but then it cracks. Near a tree in the shadow world, someone asks about Lord Pungray and about Lady Nare, a girl with green hair. The group members comment that it feels like they are in a dream. Haru asks what it could be, and Dujin wants to know what was wrong. The deity explains that this was the old Shinsei, the shadow world. Juan says this place feels like a movie and even has structures from an ancient era. The girl approaches, panting, saying they are all people she doesn't know. Dojin says he didn't notice her coming because there was no wind there, and Hosu tells everyone to move forward together since they were in the biome's nest. Zaya wonders what she is, since he didn't feel any hostility from her, wondering if it's because she's confident in her power that she was able to appear like that. Some biome children ask if Malsik is going to hide since they seem to be looking at her, and Zia switches his vision to purple. Malsik asks if she caused him any trouble along the way, and if that's the case, she apologizes. The biome children call out to him. Juan says she's a young biome, and Dujin calls out to Zeha. The child notices something in them, climbing onto Zeha and saying he had a sword, and the girls say they were playing hide and seek and it looked fun. Zia reflects that it was the perfect time for childhood memories to return, and the children notice they don't have ears and tails because they were Gom, the ones Nure talked about. Jun asks if the children know Nure. They say yes, because she was the prettiest teacher at the training school and they were going to marry her when they grew up, but they want to see her soon. Malsik asks if, by any chance, his name was Juan, leaving the guy in disbelief. Dojin asks what happened to Hosu defeating every living biome, and he tells him to shut up, asking how he could take their lives when they seem so cute talking with Juan. A crack appears in the sky of the shadow world. Zaya asks what is happening because the ground is breaking. Other people approach calling out to Malsuk, and the guy thinks they were more villagers. An old woman asks who that handsome young man was, and Malsuk calls out to Grandma's son. She says she forgot why she came there, but says the place is splitting in half and they should leave. Malsuk says this place is about to collapse, but there's no time to explain and they should follow her. Dojin asks if they are leaving the shadow world. Malsuk looks uneasy and says it's not that they won't, but that they can't. The guy asks what that means since they were among other biome there, but Malsuk explains that the biome become completely weak when they lose their ancestral powers. Zia asks if that tree is Shindansu, and the biome girl says that to be exact it's an ordinary tree and keeps growing to sustain the world, being the tree of wisdom. The blonde guy thinks it's unbelievable because, just as she said, he feels stronger the closer he gets to the tree and asks if Haru feels that. Dojin says his shoulder no longer hurts, and Juan says he's healed, with Scene noticing the powers. Elder Sun says they feel the powers of Gon and biome coming from them, and that these powers are like Taba's. Malsik says Hupo would be angry if she spoke of Taba, and Zia repeats that, while the elder says that these people are from outside. Zia looks at his palm as his power grows. The biome say the crack is getting bigger, and it had never happened on this scale, and Scene comments that it feels like the sky is falling. Hosu carries a child on his back and asks what happens if the world ends, and the girl says they will lose their lives without being able to return. Remembering that the prophecy spoke of the mixed race bringing destruction, Dojin says they will lose their lives if they stay there and should leave. Scene calls out for Zeha at that moment, but the blonde extends his arm toward the biome, saying that they will leave together, and the girl doesn't understand it fully, because Lord Tabe and Hupo have been in a long fight as they broke the Shindansu, and without it, they can't protect the others, having some kind of danger. And still, they long to leave. Zeta says that if the Gon and biome tribes don't attack each other, perhaps losing the ancient powers won't be a problem, as they would protect them, and thus Malsik thinks of Shinsei. Because 4,000 years is a long time to return, and she can't feel a greater nostalgia for her home. Malsik shouts that they won't be able to remain loyal to the master if they perish there, and should follow these men to leave this place. The girl thinks that maybe they don't have the ancient powers with them, but they will be on Master Hupo's side. Zia says he hoped everyone hated Taba for destroying Shindansu, but they still called him master, and Sun says that he was crossing the line by saying that. But for a long time, Hupo had no friends, and Tabe approached him, and they had no idea how much that made him happy. His master never had social skills, even though he was very kind by nature, and he misunderstood for a long time, causing a fight, but the two don't fight anymore. The structure starts to break, and the elder says that if he knows Master Hupo, he must tell him that the elders have been waiting for him. Inside the Yisel company structure, Yu-Gi-Oh runs out and says that the day has finally come to plant the Shindansu seed. Hyupo agrees because he's waited a long time for this day. The young man advances in front of his master and says this must be the center because they felt the flow of strange energy. Wondering what that is because it's Shindansu. Walking through the city while helping the young man, Bolty comments that Mero must stop him, and his friend tells him not to speak because it would worsen his injuries. The young man says it's late, and he knows his body better than anyone, and even the healing of a biome can't heal that wound. Mero says it seems weak and will save him by applying blood and flesh to him now, and Hyoseo says that this will make him the villain here, putting the mask on his face and calling Mero's name. The young man is shocked and then faints. Bolty thanks Hyoseo, and the white-haired man says that since his warrior will collapse in front of him, he can say his last words, and he will listen. The biome tells him to hurry because his master will be in danger, and he's planning to deceive his master, but Hyoseo wants to know who he's referring to. He tells him that the monster's name is Wandong, and he is the snowflake who deceived Taba, and he also questions if the Bulgasali grew for 4,000 years. A monster that can transform into any organism as long as it consumes fresh blood, and Bolty tells him to make sure Mero isn't hurt, and his friend confirms. Bolty is sitting on the ground, saying that the ground is cold, while the name of that monster is Bulgasali. He almost starts to lose his blurry vision, but hears a voice calling his name. Biome hunters say it's really Bolty, and they must shoot because they'll take care of him before taking his life. Bolty wonders if it's too late to do this, because the arrow of his revenge was aimed at the wrong place, calling for Nare and Zahu. Wanting to know if it's too late to apologize, now with his body already lifeless, Wandong enters a room, saying that at this moment, everything is cracking. There were human shadows inside these eggs. One of them explodes, releasing some kind of slimy liquid. Those white creatures come out of the egg, screaming hysterically after being born. Wandong takes off his shirt and tells Tebe to look because they are his children and will be able to live proudly in Shinsei. Then he shouts that by tomorrow's dawn, Shinsei's peace will be destroyed by him. The creatures scream, believing him. Wandong says that for thousands of years, he's cared for his beautiful children to make Shinsei what it is today. But soon it won't be as peaceful as his because it will be his and only his. Hyupo places his hand on the ground. Yu-Gi-Oh says that this repulsive energy is the same one they felt a few days ago, and his boss says that there are a huge number of powerful energies heading there. A flash of light appears in the sky, falling behind the two shortly after. Hyoseo calls out to his master. Yu-Gi-Oh questions what was up with that dramatic entrance of his, and the white-haired one says his master should know that what stands before him requires his full strength. Hyupo asks if he's insulting him, since maybe he has grown weaker, but he won't be beneath the Gom tribe. So Hyoseo must move, because the war is near, and once he obtains the power of Shindensu, he will annihilate every creature, including the biome. Hyoseo calls his master and apologizes, but says they are going to be annihilated for this, asking if he remembers Snowflake, the Shindensu who prepared this trap, and as he knows, the real one was destroyed during a war. Yu-Gi-Oh shouts that he's being insolent, and a Bulgaseli can't handle even a single rabbit, and won't ever be at his master's level. Hyupo recognizes that energy, and he also says it was Snowflake, and he's sure his master recognizes the energy of the one who just recently severed his arm. Snowflake grew strong enough to become Taba, and could now defeat Bolty when unleashing his full power. Yu-Gi-Oh asks about him having lost his life, and Hyupo says that if it's true, it's all the more reason for him to hurry, because these things have taken too long, and the Shadow World can't hold on any longer, so they must plant the seed quickly. With no time to rest, the portal to the Shadow World begins to crack. A girl says the entrance to the Shadow World is closing, and Sun says they'll be trapped inside, and Dujin says they caused it. Malsik says the air feels nice, and that they were back as she looks at the sky. Returning to Shinsei, where a meteor shower is taking place, the animal ears of the biome begin to disappear. Their human ears also lose their pointed shape. Zia asks if they really lost their biome powers. Hosu says he hates to ruin the mood, but they need to know where Hyupo is. Malsik explains that he's in the center to plant the Shindansu tree, and Hosu repeats that, so the girl says that's where the energy is fully concentrated. Hosu wants to know exactly where that is, and Haru says he thought everyone already knew, because the place where they reward the hunters for biome lives is the very center where energy is concentrated, the place where the Yisel Tower stands. Dojin repeats that it's in the center of the city, and Ziha says that if the battle happens there, people will be in danger. The boy says he just said that, and energy started to surge. If Hyupo is in the center of the city, Zia calls all his friends, saying they are here to protect Shinsei and to take revenge on their enemy. Their target is Hyupo because he took the lives of countless Gom, and they can't just watch him hurt humans. Zia thinks Hyupo must be loved by the biome, and even if he defeats him, his revenge will only start another. But now what he needs is conversation and persuasion, saying there's a way to think and make Hyupo not take part in this battle. Malsik asks to be taken, since they're going to speak with her master, because she will deal with him, since she won't let him destroy peace over his own revenge. And Ziha thinks he and Hyupo are alike, because both are full of vengeance and contradict their desire for peace, deciding to take the path of blood, creating a trail of ice between the others. Wondering if the revenge Hyupo spoke of was really a great cause, since his parents gave their lives to protect them, but never spoke of it unless it was important. Ziha asks what they think of Hyupo's revenge. Haru calls out to Ziha. Juan says he doesn't care about revenge, since he wants a world where both sides coexist, and Dujin says defeating Hyupo will bring peace. Hyupo says he doesn't feel that way, but there's no choice. Juan says he's not forgiving him, and Scene adds that Shinsei will be peaceful again. If peace can be restored that way, he calls out to everyone while Tebe's voice says he will lead the way. He thinks something is wrong, because in Tebe's memory, he was betrayed by Hyupo, but he doesn't feel any resentment from him in the memories, nor from the tribes. Haru says the answer will be revealed soon, whether they want it or not, and he points ahead. Dojin asks what that is in front of them, as a dark energy takes over that area and begins to transform the city, while they wonder what on earth is happening to Shinsei. Wandong holds a fan in his hand, opening it and creating his own wind, saying that the view is truly a spectacle, asking what Taba thinks about it. One of the shape-shifting monsters bites a bit of flesh. It says it will eat every creature in Shinsei, and Jingwei agrees because they must become complete humans, as their father wishes to be. A car approaches that location. Two people are under the car, and the man says it will be fine because the Biam hunters will be there soon. However, the monsters strike the car. The creatures continue using their claws on the bodies of the humans. Blood flows underneath the car, and the monster uses its tail to wipe, but there's an eye there while it drinks the blood, and thus the creature advances to attack them. An explosion stops this, and the monsters focus their attention in different directions. Someone approaches and asks what these ugly monsters are, and if they are Biam or something like that, because it's a difficult nuance in their city, approaching with a tank. He says he will earn less for the civilians who lost their lives. One of the monsters approaches that tank to attack the general, but something aims at its head with a laser, exploding the creature before it gets close to the man. The helicopter continues flying overhead and has a weapon barrel to strike the creatures. A blonde man says that the butterfly tiger people failed to hunt the Biam, and their reputation was really exaggerated, while the soldier says that the laughter sounded like a villain. In the city newspaper, Fiore says he's the equipment merchant, and this is a message to all hunters there that they shouldn't lower their guard, because these creatures weren't Biam, and they need to be more vigilant than when fighting one, and Comet tells him not to worry, because they're stronger than he thought, but Fiore tells them not to hurt the civilians in that area. Another white creature prepares to attack a woman, but a human cuts the creature with a shovel. People scream that Fiore's equipment is working, and the girl tells them to form groups of 6, because if each one takes care of the monsters, they'll suppress them. Fiore asks if he worried for nothing, being at the Chaco headquarters. Jinwi says she heard there were useful Biam hunters outside Inwang Mountain, and they were much better than she expected, scratching the face of a hunter with her massive claws, decapitating the man's head from his body. She asks if this was the human monster Fiore mentioned. The hunters with daggers advance toward her and ask how she dares. Comet continues shooting from his helicopter. His soldier says they need 1 charge for each of the monsters, but the man responds that they're dangerous. But he doesn't think anything's more dangerous than that little pretty girl staring at them, yet he shouldn't look at her because she's not the biggest one there. A giant centipede is clinging to a building and ready to attack. That monster says it's too noisy. It seems like she's looking toward the helicopter, and it's a totally disgusting animal. So first, they need to take care of the giant insect. He then draws another weapon, shooting at the creature while his soldier gives him the information. The projectiles don't even pierce the creature. The creature asks how that's possible, because it's something totally annoying, and then it swings its tail, breaking the helicopter in half. The tank asks if these weapons can't penetrate its skin and wonders if now is his chance to fight. Jingwei watches everything with a smile on her face. A radio from that man says it's ready for the bullets that pierced armor and fire, and the general tells him to aim and shoot. The little girl says they met last, and she noticed him in front of her, clapping, and saying she can feel a greater energy than the spider she recently encountered. Jingwei screams excitedly when she notices Hyupo calling her a dart Biam, and Hyoso comments that she looks like the snowflake, while the leader says she has the blood of her brothers. Then she will listen to the warning that appeared on the television, telling them to release their powers because they will face this head-on, and both Biam obey their master. Zia continues running with his friends, but he notices something different in front of him. The group of 7 stops in the middle of the battle area because everything was destroyed, and Zia wonders if they're late. Malsit points in that direction, signaling for Juan to keep firing his arrows, shooting at the hand of one of the creatures. A monster walks away from the two and asks what that was, saying they were the ones he saw during the day, and they're stronger now, he's sure of it. Dujin notices their energy is completely different from earlier that day, and Haru says they could feel the human blood. Zia removes his coat, asking if they ate the humans, because he would never forgive anything that threatens the peace of Shinsei, thus activating a half-Bium form, and saying they'd better be ready. Zia prepares his weapon in a stance. One of the monsters says he's acting strange and wonders why he's so angry, since all of them are nothing more than ingredients for his perfection, and his rage changes nothing as long as they are weak. Zia tells him to stop while the monster crushes the human. He finishes squeezing and tells the swordsman to accept it, because weakness has no place in this land, and that's what Shinsei desires, but Zia says he's only spouting nonsense, asking if he's done talking because he shouldn't expect to lose his life peacefully. The creature's blow hits Zia's sword. He makes a horizontal slash, forcing the monster to retreat by leaping back, and Haru comments that these monsters must have destroyed all those buildings just by moving. The creature saves just a rope beginning to encircle them, actually Haru's power. Those same ropes begin striking the monster's legs and lift energy around that place to defeat them. They jump high and say they can't move properly because of the long-distance attacks. Juan and Dujin ready their aim to strike the monsters, while Scene analyzes that it's strange because the monsters are slower compared to before, and Hosu agrees. Zia continues fighting one of the shapeshifters in a sword battle. Malsa comments that the way they look now, they become much stronger, and the woman asks if he doesn't feel it. She points ahead and says the energy flowing from all of them was strong enough to make them unrecognizable compared to the first time they met, and Scene asks if they had changed, wondering if it might be because of Shindansu and remembering the conversation about it continuing to sustain the world. The monster is struck by Ziha's sword and complains that his wound isn't regenerating and he's losing. But that can't happen, as the swordsman readies another horizontal slash, and the monster says that some Gom tribe members were overpowering him. Zeha attacks, explaining that he's not qualified to live in this land, and he's simply going to bring down anyone who disturbs the peace of Shinsei, and tries to recall what he said about Shinsei's wishes, that weakness has no place in that land, asking if he doesn't realize how absurd those words were, and tells him to go and lose his life. The monster begins to vanish in front of him, saying things have become different from when Jinga was there, and Juan asks if Zeo was hurt, but the boy denies it. They should hurry and head toward Hupo. The centipede monster was waiting for them, and so the group of 7 people was approaching that place. That general lights his cigarette, saying another one is coming and they should hurry and shoot him, and the tank continues firing. The projectile hits Jingwei right on the forehead, but it doesn't even harm the girl, destroying the building beside her. Jingwei says the wires were too few and prepares a blood orb, while the general asks from inside the tank what that was. She touches the ground, creating a domain like a lake. Upayog says it was coming from below, while Hupo calls for Hyoseo and he responds. The BM leader prepares to withstand the creature's attack, using Hyoseo's mask to charge toward Jingwei, but the woman dodges Hupo's blow. Because the BM leader was able to bite her shoulder, Jingwei says it's truly awful because his power is on a completely different level compared to Bolty. Hupo drinks some of her blood and says it tastes bad, while the girl charges and kicks Hyoseo's mask. A kind of wing grows on Jingwei's shoulder, attacking Hupo, who defends the blow with his shield mask, which begins to crack. Hupo releases energy from his finger. The girl asks what that is, since she could block any slow attack like that with her eyes closed. But she notices something different because a massive explosion occurs from the release of that power. That city begins to be destroyed along the way. Hyoseo calls out to his master. Jingwei's body was missing its torso. Yuviup says they managed to defeat that monster, and Hyoseo says that those cursed words revive the ones who were defeated. Then they fall silent for a few seconds, but the creature starts to heal again, and Yuviup shouts that she was alive and Hyoseo was right. Hupo watches her reassemble from up close. Hyoseo notices there was poisonous smoke in the area, and his master orders them to remain vigilant because the battle was just about to begin. The girl releases her power and says it's incredible, because she hated looking like that since it wasn't a cute look, and she hated herself for looking that way, saying she sincerely hopes from the bottom of her heart that everyone there loses their lives. A noise comes from people's phones, with a message announcing that Shinsei was being evacuated for public safety. The news also reports that the central area of Shinsei is being destroyed, causing severe traffic delays. Civilians evacuate with their children and belongings in their arms, gathering on stairways to rest. Medics try to take care of those who had been injured. The paratrooper soldier asks if the man could help him with the parachute, but the man doesn't even respond, so deep in thought he was. That man says that Shinsei was close to its apocalypse, with the city on fire while the sky was completely red. Zeha asks what that was, and Haru talks about the shock. As they head toward the centipede once again, the monster starts counting and detects 8 people, being the Chaco team and Malsuk. Zeha turns with his group members as they dodge the centipede's tail, and ask what that was. That strike causes another explosion in the city. Another part of downtown goes silent for a few seconds, while Jingwei murmurs about hating how she looks, and hoped that everyone there would lose their lives, looking more and more like a monster and standing face to face with Hyupo. He also talks about the poison, and Hyupo tells him to transform his shield into a mask this time, because Jikyu and Hara must be nearby since they saw the blast a few seconds ago, and those two must join the city's central forces, and Hyoseo accepts his orders. Hyupo tells Yuviap that he needs his spear and must hand it over. That Biom says his spear is resistant to poison too, and if he uses it, his body will break, but Hyupo tells him not to make him repeat his order.
Our video ends here. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe to the channel. Until next time, bye bye.